on DirecTV, Xfinity, Dish, Spectrum, Optimum, Cox, Fios, Uverse, Suddenlink, Mediacom, WOW, and more. Just check your cable guide. And get Blitz today at bookstores or 800 Newsmax.
The Congressional Gang of Eight has been briefed on the intelligence that Russia has paid the Taliban bounties to kill American troops.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer left the classified briefing saying,
I'm not going to say anything about the briefing, but I believe that the president is not close to tough enough on Vladimir Putin.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, also not at liberty to discuss the details, said sanctions against Russia should be the least of the U.S. response.
Whatever else happens of this, we must restore those sanctions and we must act upon them.
President Trump has called news reports about the bounties a hoax, but he has not directly addressed the substance or whether the U.S. has or will respond to Russia. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
8 Secret Service agents assigned to Vice President Mike Pence ahead of his trip to Arizona tested positive for the coronavirus right before that trip. Positive test forced a one-day delay in the trip. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. After Bloomberg News reported the European...
Welcome back, everybody. I'm placing a stop on euro. Stop on profit. So we purchased at 120, 112, 363. So I'm placing stop at 112, 383. Okay, again, if it will go back to this price and if we will sell it, we'll have profit £200. That's it. Speak to you later, guys.
Drifting just below $1,800 an ounce. Oil is down more than 1%, but now back above $40 a barrel. Guns are flying off the shelves across the U.S. Bloomberg's Greg Jarrett reports it's a sign of the times.
U.S. consumers are rushing to buy guns as the COVID-19 pandemic and protests over police brutality combine with U.S. presidential politics to fuel the unprecedented demand. Firearm background checks compiled by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a proxy for gun purchases, jumped to a record in the month of June as street demonstrations spread across the U.S. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
Facebook Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg and Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg will meet with at least 3 civil rights groups next week after their organizations led an advertising boycott of the social media company. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Hello, I'm Carol Masser.
And I'm Jason Kelly. Plenty ahead for you in this hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week, including our conversation with an old friend of the show, Mack Weldon CEO Brian Berger, on the front lines, Carol, of retail and the collision of e-commerce and brick and mortar, if that's even a thing anymore, plus time to eat.
Yes, exactly. Impossible Foods Chief Financial Officer David Lee stopped by. He talked about expanding sales of their plant-based sausage. They're rolling it out nationwide, and he had some interesting statistics about what's been happening at their company as a result of the lockdown.
But first, let's take you inside the Heist edition. It's a double issue of the magazine, an annual tradition now. Here's the editor of the magazine, Joel Weber, and Max Chafkin. He oversaw the whole issue.
Well, you know, this is the third annual Heist issue. It's a huge testament to one Max Chafkin, who has become just the captain of this thing. And, you know, Max and I just like all year long are basically like talking about this issue and like putting together our works in progress list, our WIP list, and, you know, trying to figure out the ones that are going to make it or not make it. And, you know, this issue is a culmination really of that process, and a huge testament to him. And, you know, all these reads, you know, we've always joked that we want to kind of steal your summer with this issue, and boy, could we have come out at a better moment in time for that. So hopefully everyone can, you know, pack this around all summer long and take their time enjoying it, because the stories are just tremendously good. Max, what is your favorite?
I mean, you know, I love them all, but the story that Carol mentioned at the top, the Super Bowl ring heist, is epic and wonderful. It's by Zeke Fox, and I don't want to ruin the whole thing, but it's about a very, very, very committed New England Patriots fan who decided in basically about 13 years ago to get revenge on the Giants, and the way he decided to do that was by stealing their Super Bowl ring.
And it wasn't even the biggest heist that he went after. And for that, you'll have to read the story. You know, you guys talked with Claire Sudduth yesterday about her story about the Gardner Museum, where this $500 million mystery remains this sort of thing in the art world that no one has ever been able to crack. My favorite little detail about that is we've called it the case of the empty frames, because the museum has to keep the frames empty on the walls because otherwise the entire museum would actually turn over to Harvard. They have to keep things exactly as they were when the heirs handed them down and created the museum. So it's like a heist within a heist if they act out of line. And the stories just kind of keep going. There's an amazing one that we just published today by Natalie Obiko-Pearson about Huawei and Canada, where there was once a company called Nortel. A mysterious hack sank that company. Huawei, it coincides with basically the moment in time that Huawei really started to emerge as a dominant force, and actually Huawei ended up hiring a whole team of Nortel engineers who basically ended up being the ones that built 5G at Huawei. So it's a way for us to be both timely and timeless, which is sort of one of my favorite attributes that we try to do.
They're just so much fun. So, Max, I'm just curious about the conversations you guys have in the newsroom when you're putting this together. You got to think about it. It comes out every year, at least for the last 4 years. So, you know, what goes on in the newsroom as you get ready, you know, and you plan for this?
Well, so, I mean, these are mostly fun. Not every story in this issue is what I would call, you know, 100% ball laugh. But for the most part, we're talking about stories that are fun and entertaining to report and entertaining to write and entertaining to read. And so, you know, the reporters in the newsroom like this issue. It's a kind of journalist favorite. And so, yeah, throughout the year, you know, like Joel said, you know, we're fielding pitches for these stories. The Super Bowl one that I mentioned was, you know, months in the making. I think we first started talking about it in October or November of last year. And so it's kind of a combination of just sort of over the year, you know, fielding a bunch of pitches, but then also trying to be a little bit imaginative and think about, you know, what are business stories that you wouldn't necessarily think of as a conventional heist story, but that could be thought of that way. And that's one that's like the Nortel story that Joel mentioned. You know, also, by the way, happy Canada Day, everybody. I mean, the story is about a Canadian national champion that was, you know, through its own hand, through the market and through a hack, was destroyed. And so it's not a straight up heist, but it is a story where some theft plays a role, and there's also kind of a sort of business theft that is like one company taking another company's market share. So we try to take a sort of broader view of heist, but of course they have to have some like just classic, you know, take the painting type stories, and we actually have two of those issues. So it's a mix.
And that's Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber and features editor Max Chafkin, the architect of the heist issue. I wonder if he got any big ideas, Carol.
I kind of love this issue, right? You never know what you're going to get in the heist issue, but it's all about stories of mystery and things gone missing. I love it. Stolen Super Bowl rings, fleeced workers. I don't love that. But nonetheless, man, where they go when they do this issue, it's always a wonderful, wonderful read. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, Mack Weldon is airing its ads on television for the very first time. Our conversation with the company's founder and CEO, that's coming up next. They're a digital retailer, but man, they are definitely doing things a little bit differently in this environment.
Well, they're at the nexus of everything when it comes to apparel and shopping, and we know it's a new world. This is Bloomberg.
If
you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them?
By their clothes,
Their age?
the way they speak. Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. This should be the biggest time of the year for an industry that's a 4th of July favorite. That's the sound of a Zambelli fireworks show in Pittsburgh a few years ago. A sound you won't hear as much this year because of COVID-19.
With the downturn and the fact that the majority of displays are canceling, it could affect the viability of the industry.
Zambelli Fireworks Chairman Dr. George Zambelli's company dates back to the 1890s and provides jobs to people who plan and run more than 2,000 displays annually.
We have full-time sales staff, project managers, choreographers, the traditional secretarial pool.
While it will be a tough year for Zambelli in the fireworks industry, he does see some signs of hope.
Some of the communities are starting to decide to have displays later on in the year. A number of them, Labor Day weekend.
I'm Ed Corey, Bloomberg Radio.
Elite advisory firm.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished. With over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
This week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
We're bringing you some of the most important and informative conversations we have throughout the week on our daily radio show. And Jason, we do like to remind everybody that as we were having these conversations, the world continued to evolve. The stories continued to cross the Bloomberg terminal. News just was fast and furious.
Well, and one of the things that we know is happening is that people actually are continuing to shop. Now, they're doing it a lot more online, and that's probably good news for Mack Weldon's CEO, Brian Berger. He's a friend of the show. We check in with him pretty regularly about what they're doing. Full disclosure, I'm a customer. I buy Mack Weldon stuff. It's really good. But he caught up with us to talk about some of the new things he's doing to respond to the crisis.
Irrespective of what's going on now, we're always trying to be really thoughtful about where our ads show up. A lot of our ads are served by algorithms, and so you can put constraints on on sites that you want to be excluded, but So it's something that we think about on a regular basis and that we have thought about a lot with respect to what's going on right now with Facebook. I wouldn't say that we're at a point where we feel that we're going to be kind of pulling our ads, but we absolutely respect, the moves that some of the larger brands are making in this regard. And, these are tough calls. I think for everybody, we're living in really unprecedented times. And I think that brands taking a stand for things that they believe in is really awesome. And, we've tried to do that as appropriate, and we'll continue to look at this situation and see what makes the most sense for us.
Well, and speaking of taking stands and the conversations that you're having, Brian, I do wonder about the conversations you're having around equality and inequality and diversity right now. You're a relatively young company, and in some ways it's what we've heard from a lot of CEOs we've talked to is that when you're a younger company, in some ways it's easier to have this conversation, younger in terms of the age of the company, but also candidly in terms of the age of your workforce and whatnot, and how you are constructed. Tell us a little bit, if you can, about what those conversations are like and some of the things you're hearing from your employees that you're putting into play.
It's been super. Also with respect to the COVID lockdown and then the murder of George Floyd, it's been challenging on so many levels. But the murder of George Floyd was particularly challenging because there was a bit of a galvanizing effect when we all went into quarantine, and really the message from myself and from most CEOs was that we're all in this together. And in this instance, the message was we're not all in this together. There are parts of our employee base that have been and are way more affected by this than other parts. But that doesn't mean that we can't all together come together and do a much better job at how we think about diversity and inclusion in our company. And so we took some very specific actions, and we came together, and, the work is just beginning. But starting with, a diverse and inclusive workspace, we all felt that there was way more that we could be doing proactively to make this part of our operating culture and our DNA than we have historically been doing. So we committed ourselves to certain things as a company, and we look forward to rolling those out and really sort of moving the ball forward on this.
I have to tell you, Brian, Jason and I are messaging ourselves back and forth because what you said about we found out that we're not all in this together. That is such an important statement. Because we're not.
Yeah, and again, that doesn't mean that we can't. It's an opportunity to learn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we did that was really powerful, brands are really compelled to react when things happen, and a lot do, and it's challenging because you don't want to be seen as kind of being opportunistic or pandering to the moment for your own kind of brand advantage. So we really tried to be very introspective and really had an employee-first mindset. If we treat our employees right, and we create the right work culture and an environment for our employees, then that will ultimately manifest itself externally to our customers and to our brand.
And I have to say, Jason and I have talked to, Richard Edelman of Edelman, Corporate Communications, and he's, advising a lot of companies and reminding us, whether it was through the virus and also, with what happened in Minneapolis, that it's just not the time for companies. I think we all had a little bit of a time where we had to kind of find our way, but ultimately, bottom line, it's not a time for companies to go dark or for leaders to go dark. That people want to hear from companies, especially those that they like. So it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time, too, for you guys because you're doing TV ads. What's up with that?
Yeah, so this is something that we had as a priority in 2019, but because the rest of our advertising, all the rest of our advertising programs were, quite honestly, facing a lot of headwinds in 2019 for a whole variety of reasons, we didn't really have the space in our marketing budget to really execute on it. And like so many things that have happened during this kind of 100-plus day quarantine, it's just an amazing example of our team, our entire company, our entire team doing more with less. no fancy shoots, no big production budgets, no kind of new, original content. We effectively looked into the assets that we had and really found probably the best thing you can use in an ad, which is a whole bunch of video customer testimonials that we had done earlier in the year that we were able to repurpose with some video editing, with some voiceover, with some graphic insertions around product, and really to stitch together creative that was very I think tone-wise really appropriate for where we are right now, and enabled us to get to market really fast with a test. And then the other thing where basically a lot of advertisers pulling out of traditional kind of linear television, spot television, over-the-top video, create a little bit more space for brands like ours to come in and test.
Right.
Because we're just testing this right now.
That's Mack Weldon, founder and CEO Brian Berger. Jason, we love talking with him. Digital retailer, right? But they did open their first brick-and-mortar store about a year ago this spring at the Shops at Hudson Yards. So really understands the retail environment and really how to operate in this new world order.
Well, and what I find fascinating is the world has in many ways, no one would have predicted it this way, has sort of come to him, not only in terms of the way people shop, we're all shopping online, but what we're buying, what we're wearing. I am a testament to this. You see me every day
T-shirts
via
all the time.
our video conference system. It's T-shirts and jeans all the time. And we had a story this week via the New York Times about Zoom shirts, basically people throwing on a dress shirt if they've got to be seen on video. I do that sometimes, but I do wonder what's going to stick on the other side of this.
That's right. I recently saw you in a jacket. I'm like, Jason, what's going on over there?
Feels weird.
I know. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, we've got an investor and entrepreneur, looks at the world through so many different lenses. We're talking about FS Investments, Vice Chair and CEO of Campus Apartments. David Edelman is back with us. That's coming up next.
This is Bloomberg.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
With perspective comes clarity.
Each week, the decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath, or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm? Or to someone called Al, or Derek, or Sanjay, or Sue, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Steph. She's a bus driver.
Now that people are using public transport again, we really need to make sure that we keep each other safe. Passengers need to stay 2 metres apart. If that's not possible, make it at least 1 metre. I want to see everyone wearing face coverings over their mouth and nose, unless you've got a good reason not to. And when you get to where you're going, you need to wash your hands. We've still got to play our part.
Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after an approved used Volkswagen, for a limited time, you can buy one with 2 years warranty, 2 years MOT cover, 2 years roadside assistance, and 2 services all included at 8.9% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
I need to sit down.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July. At participating retailers on used Volkswagens aged between 90 days and 60 months only. Indemnities may be required. Warranty valid for vehicles up to 100,000 miles at activation. MOT cover is up to 2 years and is underwritten by UK General Insurance Limited. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Arizona Public Health Association Mike Humble says the state's hospitals are now approaching crisis mode because of the surge in new coronavirus cases.
We're in a position where we're in, it's called crisis standards of care, and it's essentially state activated that level of care. And what it means is that patients will, as resources become shorter and shorter relative to demand, people will be triaged in a different way to determine what kind of care they get. So if you would normally have been in an ICU bed, intensive care bed, you might not get that bed at this point. Just depends on the resources at the time.
A new U.S. record high for new cases, 55,000. At least 40 states have rising rates of infection. Californians living in several key cities could incur hundreds of dollars in fines if they venture out in public without a now mandated face covering. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. European stocks turned lower after Bloomberg reported the European Central Bank is facing a potential rift over how much their emergency bond program should stay weighted toward weaker countries such as Greece and Italy. The friction at the ECB highlights the risk to markets should promised stimulus measures fall short. And U.S. stock futures are lower on a day U.S. stock and bond markets are closed for the Independence Day holiday. Dow futures are now down 75, S&P futures down 9, and NASDAQ futures down 5. The FTSE is now down 1.3%. The CAC 40 is falling nearly 1% after French President Emmanuel Macron asked his prime minister and government to resign. The German DAX is down 0.5%. Earlier, Asian shares rose. The Nikkei gained nearly 0.75%. The Hang Seng gained nearly 1%. And China's CSI 300 was up nearly 2%. The dollar is little changed, headed for its first weekly drop in a month. Gold is slightly lower, still just below $1,800 an ounce. Oil is down more than 1%, but now back above $40 a barrel. Food prices are rebounding after a 4-year low, Bloomberg's Courtney Donahoe reports.
Global food prices rose 2.4% in June as the reopening of economies helped many agricultural commodities. The gains in a United Nations gauge were led by a surge in vegetable oils and sugar as import demand improved and higher oil costs boosted biofuel consumption. Support also came from coronavirus-related supply issues, including port bottlenecks in Brazil and migrant labor shortages. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Well, today we're bringing some of the most important, we hope, informative conversations we had on our daily radio show this week, Bloomberg Business Week, 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time, just as a reminder. And we love talking with folks, Carol, who have multiple lenses, multiple views into the economy and business.
Takes almost a couple minutes to just introduce him, but I love talking with him because, as you said, Jason, he can talk about real estate, sports, education, travel. David Edelman, he's CEO of Campus Apartments. He's also the vice chair of FS Investments. That's an alternative investment fund manager. They've got about $24 billion of assets under management. And we caught up with him, to just check in about where we are in terms of the investment and business environment.
It's interesting, you had the best quarter since 1987 for the Dow, so I guess, I don't think things were that as good a month or 6 weeks ago when we were on the phone. So a lot has happened in the markets, I guess, since then. And, interesting times.
And here we are. Yeah, this sort of divergent world that we're living in, David, for sure. And we've been talking a lot about that. So let's start there. What do you make of it? I mean, you see investments across the spectrum from private to public. You see the public markets, but you're also looking at startups. You're advising entrepreneurs. Like, synthesize it for us. Like, what do you make of the world? What's your view?
It's interesting. Look, if I was betting against the market, I would have been really wrong. And, I didn't take into account how much capital the Fed would put into the economy to kind of, prop it up. And it's done an unbelievable job because I think, without that, we wouldn't have an all-time high where we are right now and a great quarter in the markets for sure. And they've done a great job of taking, a horrible pandemic and creating optimism, at least from a standpoint of the capital markets.
Well, David, are you one of those who thinks there is a divergence between what's happening in the financial markets versus what is happening in the real economy? What are you seeing, as you look at your different businesses and your different investments?
So it's interesting. I also wouldn't have bet that, May and June had strong retail sales as things started opening. There was this pent-up demand, and, I didn't see that coming because, you still have over, 30, 40 million unemployed people, which is just, really sad. And, we have to figure out a way to open up the economy and get those folks back to work. And, for those who've lost jobs in industries that, might have gone away, we need to retrain them. And so that's the divergence that's confusing to me is where you see the markets really doing well. You see retail spending going well, e-commerce is moving, and then you still have to think about these, kind of the unemployment claims.
David, talk to us, shifting gears a little bit, about back to school. You're very involved with campus housing, campus apartments. Carol mentioned you're the CEO there. Housing obviously is a key part of getting college kids back on campus. What's it going to look like? What are you seeing literally from the ground level?
Yeah, so I think, one thing got really proven during the pandemic, and I think I mentioned this last time, that over 65%, up to 85%, depending on where we were in the country, of our residents actually quarantined in our apartments off campus and kind of stayed in that environment. And what became very clear, and the universities will acknowledge this, that the online learning experience, people didn't feel they got the value out of that. And so people are craving that, kind of in-person experience, looking, for the schools to open. And the schools really realize from a business perspective, I'm a parent who's got a high school senior that's going to start as a freshman in the fall. If you're a college that doesn't open, your child, you might lose that customer and they might transfer to a school that is going to open. And so really important from the business perspective that they kind of provide a service to their customers. There was a great article actually today in the Wall Street Journal from the president of Cornell talking about how they're opening up, why they're opening up, the COVID testing they're going to do. And, so I commend the schools because they've really come out with thoughtful plans. And, in the last 3 weeks, most of the other schools in the country, we're probably north of 90% of the schools have probably reported at this point, with some sort of hybrid model, meaning your big, giant, 300-person lectures, well, those they're going to do online, but they're still going to utilize in-person, in-class teachings for the smaller classes, just a little more spread out.
You are the owner of a number of sports teams. Where are we in the world of sports right now? How optimistic are you that we're going to get back to something resembling close to normal here?
I think I've watched every replay of every, basketball game for the last 20 years, so I'm ready for fresh content, as is everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And, I think, the leagues are all trying to figure this out as best they can. The NBA is near and dear to me, and, my friends who play are, ready. They're all working out very hard, and I think that, I have to give credit to just, the way they're trying to be safe, and which is what you have to do first. But, I think people are excited to have, some fresh needed content.
And that's FS Investments Vice Chairman David Edelman. They have some private equity investments. They've got about $24 billion in assets under management, Carol. And I love his view of the world, in part because he's in Philadelphia, so that makes it a little bit different. He owns some sports teams. He's invested in the higher education realm through real estate. So all these inputs that he gets gives him a pretty holistic view of the world.
I love what he had to say, too. He, too, like so many of us, were surprised at the market run-up. And it was just kind of fun to get his take on where we are, certainly in the equity markets and so much more. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, the plant-based protein market getting a boost during the virus lockdown. We check in with Impossible Foods Chief Financial Officer David Lee. That's coming up next.
This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. It seems COVID...
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Chantel, or Raj, or Fiona, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
How do we control coronavirus now? Here's Michael, a delivery driver.
All day, every day, I'm seeing people. Last thing I want to do is give anyone coronavirus. So the first sign of a cough, soon as my temperature rises, any loss of taste or smell, I'm staying in, booking a test, only going out to get it done. I mean, you want to know straight away, right? That's how we protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
What would the world be like if we listened more? At Honda, our ears are always open to new ideas. Oh, there's one now, knocking on our eardrum. What's that? What if we made a car with cameras instead of wing mirrors? A robot mower that knows when it's time to cut the grass. A self-balancing motorcycle. And what if by 2022, all of our mainstream cars were hybrid or electric? Huh. Great idea. Thanks, ears. Honda. The power of dreams.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? Every Tuesday at KFC. Participating restaurants ends 18th of August 2020. Tuesdays only, subject to availability, not available online.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up at the Super Bowl predictions instead. Because
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
World markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
The head of the Arizona Public Health Association, Mike Humble, says the state's hospitals are now approaching crisis mode because of the surge in new coronavirus cases.
We're in a position where we're in, it's called crisis standards of care, and it's essentially a state-activated that level of care. And what it means is that patients will, as resources become shorter and shorter relative to demand, people will be triaged in a different way to determine what kind of care they get. So if you would normally have been in an ICU bed, intensive care bed, you might not get that bed at this point. Just depends on the resources at the time.
A new U.S. record high for new cases, 55,000. At least 40 states have rising rates of infection. Californians living in several key cities could incur hundreds of dollars in fines if they venture out in public without a now mandated face covering. I'm Mike Moss.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Today, we're bringing you some of the most important and informative conversations we had on our daily Bloomberg Business Week radio show this week. And Carol, you know, the meat alternative market, I'm fascinated by it. Yeah. You are too. It is booming during the pandemic.
Yeah, and one of the big players in this market that continues to tap into that growing demand is Impossible Foods, Jason. And what's interesting, this was a big week for them. They rolled out nationally its first all-new product since it released its Impossible Burger back in 2016. It's sausages, protein-based sausages.
We got the latest on the new product and the market from Impossible Foods CFO David Lee.
Well, our world has continuously been about increased demand, even as more and more folks to this global pandemic are sheltering in place. We've seen something like a 30x increase in Impossible Foods business in grocery stores, and we're on track, actually, to exceed 50x growth this year. We are trying to adjust to meet the meat eater where they're increasingly shopping, and that means in grocery stores. It means creating our direct-to-consumer business at buy.impossiblefoods.com, as well as supporting the rollout at Starbucks and at Burger King, our new platform, the Impossible Sausage.
So, David, talk to us about sort of those shifts that you had to make to meet that demand. Was it, did it involve sort of shifting spending? Did it involve shifting production? Like, take us inside what you had to do as this sort of changed and then kept changing.
Right, because surges in demand are great, but sometimes you got to all of a sudden...
You got to meet them.
Yeah, exactly.
You bet. I mean, we have been well prepared for the surge that we're recently seeing, because a big part of our research and development is not just in a delicious Impossible sausage product or an Impossible burger. It's the actual way we make our product. So being able to scale with co-manufacturers like OSI has allowed us to meet all the demand we're seeing and continue to grow. That said, it is unprecedented, the amount of demand we're seeing, and so far we are on track to supply it.
Were you, David, surprised by that? I mean, I know a lot of people have been home and they're ordering lots of food, but I am curious how you think specifically the virus impacted kind of your world, maybe opened it up or made more people aware. Did you specifically target folks with advertising, or how do you think it came about? What are you hearing?
Well, our brand has been built predominantly based on earned media and word of mouth. And I think as more and more meat eaters are sheltering in place, they're thinking about the choices that they make every day to feed their families. They're thinking about what does the meat they crave do to the environment and their health. You know, 9 out of 10 of our customers are self-avowed meat eaters. And when you have the benefit of really deeply thinking about better choices for yourself, it's a natural fit with the rollout of the products, because we're just as craveable. We just don't have as many compromises for your health and for the environment.
That's interesting. So tell us more about what you've learned about the customer, David, because you make such a good point that it is a very reflective time. I mean, and that extends to everything from exercise to nutrition to, you know, maybe even some bigger crises that we're facing as a country around social justice and consumption and inequality and all those different things. But it is a time to get to know your customer more. Tell us more about that.
Well, you know, meals have always brought families together, and the Impossible Burger could possibly be the one product that's been launched to bring everyone together, whether you're a meat eater, you're vegan, you're halal, or you're kosher. You know, what we find is that as home chefs experiment with cooking, you know, they've come to realize that meat is incredibly bespoke to how they want to serve it. They can make it rare or well done. They can put it in pasta or a burger. An Impossible Burger and Impossible Sausage are unique in that they're entirely made from plants, but you can make them into whatever you're hoping to make for dinner for your family, unlike almost any other plant-based product prior. So I think that experience of watching our products transform in their own hands has been a unique one, different than going to a Burger King or to a Starbucks, where you can enjoy the Impossible Breakfast Sandwich or the Impossible Sandwich. And that's been driving a lot of the growth we're seeing out of grocery.
Well, that's what I was curious, David. Like, break it down for us. I mean, we're Bloomberg, we're nerdy. We love, you know, kind of to break down exactly where you're seeing the growth. So is it, you know, you talk about the direct-to-consumer market so people can go online. There's the supermarkets. There's those partnerships, right? Starbucks, you know, announcing their own breakfast sandwich that's made with your Impossible sausage. So rolling it out to 15,000 stores nationwide. Where is the most growth among those revenue streams?
Well, candidly, we're seeing growth across all of them. I mean, 20,000 locations for Impossible sausage made from plants since the start of the year, an increase of 30x the number of grocery stores, right? Up to nearly 5,000 locations today, with plans to grow that even faster. And then the recovery that we are helping support amongst food service, where you're seeing innovative tactics by our restaurant partners. They're shipping raw Impossible Burger direct to the home consumer. They're creating meal kits. And frankly, all of that is happening in a way that transcends any single channel. Because we are building a new business, we can adjust to where the meat eater has shifted, and they're shifting increasingly to cooking at home. But we are seeing resurgence again back in the food service world.
So, David, talk to us about sausage, because, you know, that is an area...
Because Jason loves sausage, David. That's what it's
sausage. I've tried the product in restaurants. I'm excited to try it in my home. But, I mean, it obviously is a different sort of product. But as you say, a lot of possibilities there. Tell us about sort of the development of it and how you market it maybe differently than you do just the straight-up burger and the more straight-ahead meat or meat product.
Yeah, I mean, well, the hallmarks for Impossible Sausage in some ways are really similar to the way in which we've been successful with the Impossible Burger. It appeals to meat eaters like me and you. It transforms the way the Impossible Burger does. And it's comfort food. You know, we announced that with Yelp's help, we're at 30 of America's top-ranked diners, these mom and pops that are just known for delicious comfort food, even as we roll out at 15,000 locations across Starbucks and Burger Kings. And that's the thing about a great sausage product. It creates a new opportunity for breakfast for Impossible Foods. You know, burgers are great, and the Impossible Burger is one of the best, but it's often not the first thing you wake up and choose to eat. Right. Whereas a great breakfast sandwich is something I think we all...
If the first thing you're waking up and eating is a burger, David, you've had...
You're in college.
You're in college, or you've had a really rough night, I'm guessing.
That's right. But, you know, speaking of which, the Impossible Sausage has some of the best health credentials around in that it has a 60% more iron than an average brand of pork sausage, right? It has 45% less calories, 60% less fat. So, you know, patty for patty, the Impossible Sausage is a pretty good choice first thing in the morning or any time.
Well, you know what's
interesting? Which is why we're very excited about
I have to jump in because, you know, and Jason and I always go there when we're looking at all these, you know, meat alternatives, protein-based products, you know, because you know that everybody talks about the high levels of sodium. I've got to say, I went to your website. You guys go into a lot of detail about the sodium levels in your products. It's very informative, and I highly recommend that everybody read it. Having said that, it sounds like, though, David, that you folks at Impossible are still looking at ways to reduce maybe the things that might make people a little concerned about the health factors of eating your products. Is that fair to say that you're still trying to, you know, maybe even improve it, whether it's the sodium levels or what have you?
Absolutely. You know, the benefit of the way we approach our work is we're driven by science, which means there's a new, better version around the corner for every product we have. You know, we already have no cholesterol in our products and as much protein, as much iron, but we're increasingly improving the health profile, whether that's less and less fat or less and less salt. You know, the thing about salt, which you probably read, is that most meat eaters don't take raw meat and eat it without seasoning it. And so we like to think that by the time you enjoy our product versus the product from an animal, it's not altogether that different in the amount of sodium you're consuming. But that said, the promise of our technology is to get better and better, and I think you'll see more and more versions and improvements to come.
That's Impossible Foods Chief Financial Officer David Lee, and I think it's really interesting, Jason. They're seeing growth for their products on all of their revenue streams. They talked about, I think, something like 33 times an increase in their business, which is pretty remarkable. And I also thought you and I both found it interesting that 9 out of 10 of their customers are meat eaters.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, this is a market that I think tells us a lot about where consumers are going. And it was interesting also to talk to him about their company and being a mission-driven company at a time when so many companies are facing big existential questions about what they are and where they want to go when it comes to diversity and when it comes to, you know, the type of consumers they want to appeal to.
Yeah, exactly.
And that wraps up the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Kelly.
And I'm Carol Massar. Be sure to tune into Bloomberg Business Week Radio live Monday through Friday starting at 2 p.m. Wall Street time.
And if you can't catch us live, get our daily Bloomberg Business Week podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
And be sure to check out our podcast feed for all of the full interviews that were highlighted in our weekend show over the last couple of hours. And also check out our extra podcast. We talked with Charlotte St. Martin of the Broadway League, Jason, in a week where they came out and said theaters will remain closed for at least the rest of the year.
Broadway is going to be dark for a while. You can also watch the show live on YouTube. Just search for Bloomberg Global News.
And you can get this week's edition of the magazine. That is on newsstands now.
We'll be back right here next week at the same time.
This is Bloomberg.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
There's lots to discover when you join Tesco Mobile, like the incredible iPhone SE with its Retina HD display. Perfect for streaming on the go for just $19.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. But hurry, offer ends 12th of July. Visit us in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 12th of the 7th 20 was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usual agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status, 99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Staying current on college hoops starts here on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. CBS sports columnists Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander bring you commentary, insider information, and statistical analysis covering the entire NCAA.
The amount of earning potential you could have had there, or if you had gone to play at any other place with a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, win a national championship, none of us would have faulted Cunningham for doing that, but he decided this is where he wants to be in the face of a postseason.
Search Eye on College Basketball on TuneIn to listen.
Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Mount Rushmore, packed planes. I'm Mike Moss. President Trump will attend a Mount Rushmore fireworks display today. Correspondent Joe Johns is there.
South Dakota is one of those states with increasing numbers. We're told 7,000 confirmed cases, 97 deaths, but the governor of the state says she's full speed ahead on this event.
Those who want to come and join us will be giving out free face masks if they choose to wear one, but we won't be social distancing. We're asking them to come, be ready to celebrate, to enjoy the freedoms and the liberties that we have in this country.
More than 55,000 new daily cases in the U.S., another new pandemic high. Florida saw more than 10,000 new cases. Correspondent Boris Sanchez is there.
Governor DeSantis is blaming a rise in positivity rates among young people for the surge in cases here. The median age of a new coronavirus patient in Tampa Bay is actually only 34 years old. Governor DeSantis was touting the fact that there had been no deaths among minors here in the Sunshine State. We've learned that that's changed. A 16-year-old in Lee County, a 17-year-old in Pasco County, both dying because of the disease last week. And last night we got the tragic news that an 11-year-old child in Miami-Dade County perished because of complications due to coronavirus. That's the youngest death here so far in the Sunshine State.
Far fewer flyers on this holiday, but transportation correspondent Pete Montine reports those planes that they are flying are expected to be full.
Once you're on the plane, you will have an entirely different experience, a higher chance of being on a completely full flight. American Airlines has joined United Airlines in saying that it will sell every seat on board of its flights. A big admission from United actually saying that airlines that blocked out middle seats were making more of a public relations move rather than a public health move.
Strong evidence that a new form of the coronavirus more easily spread is now in Europe and the U.S. I'm Mike Moss.
Doodle, Stewart,
Harold and Pork Chop. Pork Chop is beautiful blonde. The coat is very thick. He's an Akita German Shepherd Lab Husky mix. They did a DNA test on the 4 rescues. The first year is just a complete retraining. Lots of love, discipline, and daily upkeep. I'm a registered nurse and a personal trainer. If I eat healthy, then my dog should eat healthy. DINOVITE.com. They need the vitamins and minerals that Dynovite provides. Dynovite is nutrition. Harold, the Border Collie Pit Mix, has the most beautiful jet black coat. Stuart, my rat terrier, has fur now where he never had it before. Doodle, he's a poodle Cocker Spaniel. His energy is tremendous. The Dynovite will make your dog happy, vivacious, jump up and down, wag their tails. It will make you smile.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
I get my Dynovite at DINOVITE.com.
Several U.S. airlines are getting transfusions of federal money to keep them operating and their workers employed through the pandemic.
American is among 5 airlines set to receive a cash infusion from the U.S. government. American said in a letter to employees it will receive $4.75 billion in the government loan. The Treasury Department announced Frontier, Hawaiian, SkyWest, and Spirit are also set to receive money. It's not yet clear how much money the other airlines will receive, nor the terms of the loans. Bill Michaels, Washington.
America's recovery from the pandemic recession could last through the better part of the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office in a new 10-year forecast. The CBO now forecasts the unemployment rate will remain above its pre-pandemic level, which was near 50-year low of 3.5% until 2030. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. European stocks turned lower after Bloomberg reported the European Central Bank is facing a potential rift over how much their emergency bond program should stay weighted toward weaker countries such as Greece and Italy. The friction at the ECB highlights the risk to markets should promised stimulus measures fall short. And U.S. stock futures are lower on a day U.S. stock and bond markets are closed for the Independence Day holiday. Dow futures are now down 75, S&P futures down 9, and NASDAQ futures down 5. The FTSE is now down 1.3%. The CAC 40 is falling nearly 1% after French President Emmanuel Macron asked his prime minister and government to resign. The German DAX is down 0.5%. Earlier, Asian shares rose. The Nikkei gained nearly 0.75%. The Hang Seng gained nearly 1%. And China's CSI 300 was up nearly 2%. The dollar is little changed, headed for its first weekly drop in a month. Gold is slightly lower, still just below $1,800 an ounce. Oil is down more than 1%, but now back above $40 a barrel. Food prices are rebounding after a 4-year low, Bloomberg's Courtney Donahoe reports.
Global food prices rose 2.4% in June as the reopening of economies helped many agricultural commodities. The gains in a United Nations gauge were led by a surge in vegetable oils and sugar as import demand improved and higher oil costs boosted biofuel consumption. Support also came from coronavirus-related supply issues, including port bottlenecks in Brazil and migrant labor shortages. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
Thank you so much for joining us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager, and the stock market is closed for the 4th of July holiday weekend. Over the next hour, we'll look at what's ahead for the market in the second half with Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. We'll also focus on the tech sector with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures. First, let's take a closer look at the June jobs report. Mark Vidner is with us now, senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. So obviously a beat on the top line numbers here, Mark, with 4.8 million payrolls added in June, much bigger number than expected. At the same time, weekly jobless claims are elevated. What are your key takeaways?
Well, first off, the employment number was pretty solid. I mean, you saw 75% of the covered industries added jobs during the month of June. And the biggest bounce backs were the places that we saw the biggest cutbacks. So it was restaurants. It was auto assembly plants. It was personal services, retailers, doctors and dentist offices. And I guess if there's some good news to take away from that, in addition to the stronger numbers, it's that as much of a bounce back as we've seen, there's still more room to improve. I mean, we haven't gotten anywhere close to where we started. The jobless claims numbers, on the other hand, suggest that the rate of improvement is likely to slow, and that should be apparent when we get the July numbers a month from now.
Does that relieve some of the pressure, or does it even put more pressure on congressional lawmakers to act when it comes to enacting further fiscal stimulus, adding to the enhanced unemployment benefits?
I think it complicates the process a little bit. I think that most folks know that they have to be looking forward instead of looking at where we've been. And we're going to need more fiscal stimulus. So the timing is a little trickier this year because we've got an election coming up in November. And when we get to Labor Day, everything political basically stops because they're in full campaign mode. So they really need to do something this summer. There's no question the economy is slowing. I think that the FOMC minutes that we saw from the June meeting showed that there was an awful lot of concern about the rise in infections that we were seeing in the Sun Belt. And that's gotten a whole lot worse since the Fed met.
Speak a little bit more about what this report could mean in terms of the difficulty of the recovery. We've seen, of course, the coronavirus surging in the South and the West, and a number of states and businesses dialing back their reopenings. How could that play out in the labor market going forward?
Well, I think this could play out in a couple of ways that would be very disruptive. And I think the most worrisome is that a number of businesses were counting on reopening at some point this summer. There was a thought that the spread of the virus would slow during the summer months with the heat and more people outside and increased humidity in large parts of the country. And that just hasn't come to pass. I mean, we've seen the exact opposite. And I think that one of the outcomes of that is that we're going to see a number of businesses are going to close down, and we've already begun to see that. And with that rise in permanent closures, you're going to see job losses, and you're also going to see an uptick in credit losses.
How difficult is it going to be for those people who have lost their jobs through this and could potentially face further job loss to find some other line of work as this artificial recession moves forward?
Well, it's going to be difficult. I mean, typically restaurants are always struggling to find workers, and so where we were previously was somewhere past full employment, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect us to get back there anytime soon. But right now, I think it's awfully hard to find good-paying jobs in the hospitality industry because the business just isn't there. And even before we saw this renewed mandates that people roll back the indoor dining and put off opening bars, it was very hard for a lot of restaurants and bars to make money in the current environment. But with obeying the social distancing guidelines, they just simply couldn't. There just simply wasn't enough business for them to be profitable.
What are you seeing in the unemployment rate in terms of whether it's accurately depicting how many people are still out of work at this point?
I think it's reasonably accurate. One thing that we miss in the unemployment figures, though, is that we have an awful lot of small businesses that are sole proprietorships that have shut down. And for those sole proprietorships, I mean, they don't show up necessarily they don't show up in the unemployment statistics. But ironically, with the improved eligibility for unemployment insurance, they've shown up in the unemployment statistics, the pandemic unemployment assistance. They were able to qualify for that. So that's one of the reasons why we've had this disconnect between unemployment claims and the unemployment rate, is that small business owners, if you're a sole proprietor and your businesses have to shut down, you are eligible to file for unemployment insurance, but you may not show up in the unemployment statistics.
In our last minute here, where do you see the trajectory going in terms of recovery for the labor market?
I think we're going to see the rate of job growth is going to slow, and I would not be surprised if at some point this summer or in the fall that we see a little bit of a setback in the jobs numbers, and maybe we see a decline, nothing on the order of what we saw in April or maybe even in March. But I think that the virus is dictating the pace of the recovery, and right now the virus has resurged in a way that economic activity is almost certain to pull back. If not by mandate, I think that businesses and consumers will probably pull back on their own enough that it will cause the rate of improvement in employment to slow somewhat.
Mark Vidner, senior economist at Wells Fargo, thank you as always for your insights. Really appreciate it. And up next on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak, we'll see what's in store for the stock market the rest of the year with Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. It is 13 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband, Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. People might not be drinking as much during the pandemic. Overall, alcohol sales are down so far this year compared to last. But some people are buying the hard stuff and not just to down it in one shot.
People are actually looking. They're thirsty for alternative assets.
Murray Holdgate is the founder of Platinum Rise Capital Partners. He's running a new private equity fund focused on rare single malt whiskeys.
We call it liquid gold because it's sort of a natural safety to look in the alternative markets.
And he's promising returns of 15 to 20% year on year based on what the rarest spirits can go for on the auction block.
Year on year, some of these auctions are returning the same cask, the same bottle, and how much they're going up.
One index of luxury assets showed the value of rare whiskey jumped 564% last year. Rare coins came in second with a 175% return. Little wonder then that the initial pitch is going out to investors in Hong Kong with a more than $120,000 minimum buy-in. Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for all those video conferences with your colleagues while sitting at your makeshift desk, you could ask a robot, or someone called Robert, or Priya, or Lewis, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, it's Ali. Do you need some help finding the right tech?
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Get ready for the University of Bedfordshire. We've got all you need to make ambition become reality, to make lifelong friendships, to make contacts in your chosen industry, to make a name for yourself, to make it. In fact, we've got everything except your application. So get it in, sit back and relax. Wait, Actually, check out our generous scholarships and bursaries for support at every step at beds.ac.uk. Okay, now you can relax.
Back to the special Independence Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. We're now going to turn our focus to the stock market, and to say it was a volatile first half may have been an understatement with the world hit with the coronavirus. For more, let's welcome in Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. Roller coaster ride might be a good way to describe it, Jim. The dramatic clawback in the second quarter from the March 23rd low. Do you see the upswing continuing?
Nathan, I do. I don't think it's going to be quite as dramatic as you pointed out, the volatility that we've seen in the first half. This is what I've referred to as a crisis at warp speed, both on the downside. It fell, 34% in 23 trading days. That was about 7 times faster than the average of the previous 13 bear markets, and now it's recovered almost at record speed as well. I think that's going to slow down, but I think it's going to trend higher because I just really think the economy reopening is going to continue. It might continue at a faster pace or a slower pace depending on the virus, but I think it's going to continue, and that tells me that we're in a new economic expansion, and we're probably in a fresh bull market, and we're early in this thing with an unemployment rate still in double digits. We've got room to improve the economy in the next few years, and I think that means room to improve the stock market.
It's interesting given how quickly we've recovered from that March 23rd low. There's been some debate about whether the bull market actually ended. I mean, what's your view on that? Is this a nascent bull market, or are we still in the middle of the clawback from the Great Recession of 2008?
I get your point. I think it's well taken in some sense where we are right now, within striking distance of where we were at year end and old highs. It's almost like we just had a nasty correction more than a complete bear market. But what does make this, to me, a new bull market is that we definitely had a recession. The crisis created a recession, and when you create double-digit excess unemployment in the economy, and the amount of downdraft that we had in business operations across the spectrum, even though it was brief, that tells me what makes the new bull market is the capability to grow the economy at above normal rates for a period because you have so much excess capacity in the economy. And we certainly have that today. We got excess retail space, excess commercial space, excess job or labor supply, and that tells me we can grow faster than normal for a period, and that's the essence of the new bull market.
And of course, a big difference between past recessions and this one is that it was a forced shutdown caused by a pandemic. I mean, what does that determine? What difference does that make in terms of how we could recover from this?
Yeah, it's what I refer to. It's the only recession by proclamation that we've ever had. We just proclaimed we're going to have a recession. And I think that's why it fell so fast, is because there was no debate about whether we were going to have a recession. We knew it as soon as our leaders announced we were going to hit the off switch. And so rather than go through all the normal bear market foreplay where you debate whether slower reports is a recession or just a slowdown, everyone went right to the end right away. And then when we announced we were going to turn it back on, we came right back. So I do think that's why we've had this sort of speedy down, speedy up. From here, I think it does say that there's more of that still ahead. I think we might get back to single-digit unemployment rates here before the end of the year. And then I think it's going to be a tougher slog, maybe from 8% unemployment, more of a normal kind of recovery crawlback, if you will, from there on in. But one of the things to remember is how healthy the economy was, Nathan, before this whole event started. In February, we had strong job growth, strong profit growth, strong confidence among consumers and businesses, strong balance sheets in the private sector. And I think that still matters. One of the things that's going to help us, most recessions come about because there's vulnerabilities and there's too many parts of the economy that are out over their skis, and you truly have to have a liquidation just to improve things. We don't really have to have that. And so if we are recovering, some of that previous strength might allow us to get back quicker than maybe most people currently think.
But you sort of point out two things there. There was a strong economy before the pandemic, but afterwards you're calling for a long slog toward a full recovery. So how do you position as an investor with that kind of dichotomy in mind?
Well, the idea of a long slog to get back to where we were is there's nothing uncommon about that compared to past recessions. You know, every recession takes a long time to come back to normal, quote unquote. For example, in the 1980s, the agricultural sector, the energy sector, really never did return to normal, neither one of them. Commercial real estate crisis in 1990, it took till 1995 before commercial industrial loans got back to a new high. There's parts of the economy since 2008 that still haven't recovered. The banking industry has never been the same. So we might find that it takes a couple, 3 years to get transportation, air transportation back, or those kind of things. And there may be parts of the economy that never do come back. It's going to take a long time to get the unemployment rate down. But the reality is, doesn't matter for stocks. Stocks are going to, if we're in a new expansion, stocks are going to continue to go higher. They took off in 82 and were much higher right away, even though we still had very high unemployment all the way to the latter part of that decade. Same thing in 08. We went on to new highs in the stock market long before the unemployment rate came back to normal. So I don't think those are inconsistent. It's very common to have a stock market that goes to new highs long before the economy returns to normal.
And to your point, a lot of what's been driving the rally since the March 23rd low has been all the liquidity in the system, with the Federal Reserve acting as a backstop with all these facilities it's put into place and the promise of fiscal support. I wonder if that's creating a scenario where we could see a bubble in assets.
It's very possible. I mean, I think that's a down-the-road problem, but it's a problem, I think. We've got a powerful combination for risk assets right now. We've got a lot of fear and caution out there. And as a result, that reflects in things like almost $5 trillion sitting in money market mutual funds, an all-time record high. Just a lot of dry powder that could be converted back into the equity market.
Jim Paulson is Chief Investment Officer at Luthold Whedon Capital Management. Up next, tech stocks in focus when we speak with Loop Ventures co-founder Gene Munster. It's 25 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
People love a good story. They like it.
Prepare your child for the world ahead with Blundell's School Devon, an independent day and boarding school for 3 to 18-year-olds.
Blundell's is a very exciting and great place to be a student at.
Set in 100 idyllic acres amid the rolling hills of Devon, Blundell's can be a crucial part of the equation if you're considering a move to the southwest.
I can honestly say I wouldn't have made it to Cambridge University without the support of the teachers at Blundell's.
We're proud to offer an outstanding, quality education, less than 2 hours by direct train to central London.
I really like having a smaller class size because it helps me get more support from teachers.
Blundell's, one of Devon and Cornwall's most prestigious schools for more than 400 years. Rated excellent by the ISI. Learn more at blundels.org.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath, or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway, or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for all those video conferences with your colleagues while sitting at your makeshift desk, you could ask a robot, or someone called Robert, or Sue, or Sanjay, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, it's Colette. Do you need some help finding the right tech?
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Listening has always taught us a lot at Honda. And lately, we've been listening to your thumbs. Because thumbs can do everything now. The world is at their thumb tips. So now, the My Honda Plus app lets the thumb take control of your car too. Even when you're not inside the new Honda E, your thumb can find where you parked, set the temperature before you get in, check how much the battery is charged, and schedule charging for when electricity is cheapest. The new Honda E and My Honda Plus app. Oh, a thumbs up. Honda, the power of dreams.
Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gilbert is requiring face masks and imposing a 10 p.m. curfew as Florida's daily infections continue to spiral.
It has been a decade since fireworks were shot off at Mount Rushmore. Over a year ago, at the urging of South Dakota Republicans, the president took it as a personal mission to revive the pyrotechnics that had been banned by the Park Service under the Obama administration because of worries about brush fires. However, Native American activists will protest what they say is stolen land for the monument tonight. And late today, the president will fly out to see the fireworks and return to Washington in the middle of the night. Bob Costantini, Washington.
Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington Redskins, says the team will do a thorough review of the team name after top sponsor FedEx called on the franchise to drop the name, which many Native American groups have said is a racist term. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. European stocks fell, as did U.S. stock futures on a day U.S. stock and bond markets are closed for the Independence Day holiday after Bloomberg News reported the European Central Bank is facing a potential rift over how much of their emergency bond purchase program should stay weighted toward weaker countries such as Italy and Greece. The FTSE is down 1.5%. The CAC 40 is down 1%. French President Macron asked his prime minister and government to resign. The German DAX is down 0.8%. Earlier, Asian shares rose. The Nikkei was up nearly 0.75%. The Hang Seng gained nearly 1%, and China's CSI 300 up nearly 2%. Dow futures are now down 180 points, S&P futures are down 18, and NASDAQ futures down 22. Guns are flying off the shelves across the U.S. Bloomberg's Greg Jarrett reports it's a sign of the times.
U.S. consumers are rushing to buy guns as the COVID-19 pandemic and protests over police brutality combine with U.S. presidential politics to fuel the unprecedented demand. Firearm background checks compiled by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a proxy for gun purchases, jumped to a record in the month of June as street demonstrations spread across the U.S. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
Facebook Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg and Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg will meet with at least 3 civil rights groups next week after their organizations led an advertising boycott of the social media company. New Jersey Institute of Technology, providing industry partners with commercially focused research and innovation services through its New Jersey Innovation Institute. Learn more at njii.com. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Radio Plus app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
We're so glad you joined us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. The stock market is closed for the 4th of July holiday, and we're pleased to welcome our next guest, one of the top tech analysts on Wall Street, Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures. And Gene, when it comes to tech, I guess let's start with Tesla, because it does seem to be the stock of the moment right now. Earlier this week, it finally passed Toyota to become the most valuable car company in the world on market cap. Do you see the rally continuing for Tesla?
I do, and ultimately there is a shift. I think that the move past Toyota's market cap is noteworthy because what it is recognition for, I think, the broader investing world that this is no longer an auto company. Long thought of that as an auto company. So if you shift the perspective that this is more of a tech company, and I would define a tech company as having sustained growth above 15% for the long term, separately margins in the operating margins in the 20 to 30% range. If we use that perspective, then the rally can continue. And I do caution that there's going to be some volatility to shares because it still is one that trades in part on emotion. But there's a larger framework that's in play just about the future of mobility, and Tesla has an advantage today. And I think that that advantage is going to largely remain for the next 5+ years. And I think that is the substance of why this can go higher, is that even though some of the competitors, it's not a car company, but even though some of the competitors are car makers, that they are structurally behind, and it will be difficult for them to catch up on some key components of what makes an electric car fundamental to the future.
All right. Well, if we start to think then about Tesla as a tech company more so than an automotive company, what do you see as the catalysts for growth for this company?
It's pretty straightforward, is that EVs are the future for automotive. An internal combustion engine is clumsy, inefficient, and an electric car, it just uses energy more efficiently and is easier for consumers. You don't have to maintenance as much. You don't have to go to filling stations. And so the cost of ownership for an electric car, even though the prices are higher, we've done a lot of work related to a Model 3 versus a Toyota Camry. And over a 5-year period, it's about 10% less to own a Model 3. And so I think that just the convenience factor of EVs, along with some of the cost savings over several years, I think is going to create this massive growth. And just to frame in like what is going on, this is really happening, is that the growth in overall automotive in the U.S. in the first quarter, so this is a little bit dated, this is the March data, was down, call it 30% for broader auto sales production in the U.S. And Tesla's deliveries were up about 40%, 40. And so when you see that gap, I think it is evidence that there is, in fact, a shift going on, and it's just a better value proposition for consumers. So that is what is driving this. And if you're going to kind of take it one step further, where can this go over the next decade, is that Tesla's going to produce somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 cars this year globally. Call it 2/3 of them are in the U.S. But in 10 years, that number could be 12 to 15 million, and that would basically be as many cars as GM is making. And so this is they're just hitting an inflection curve in this demand for EVs.
Now, when we think about automated vehicles, the shift to that space, there's a lot of competition there, isn't there? So does Tesla just sort of have a first mover advantage in that space? I mean, talk a little bit about the competition it can be facing there.
So you'd think that the competition is, again, traditional auto, but it actually comes down to three fundamental pieces that make up an electric car. One is the battery. Second is the drivetrain. And the third is the autonomy piece, which is early today. There's some advanced autopilot, but full autonomy. The fit and finish, what the seats are like, the sound system, the look of the car, that is largely irrelevant when you think about the future. Any car company can do that. Tesla doesn't do a particular job of actually building the cars. They're doing a much better job today, but versus other automotive companies. But when you think about the substance of the future, the battery, the drivetrain, and the autonomy piece, those are things that are a structural advantage. And essentially, there's a catch-22 for traditional automotive. Right now, they are lagging in market share. Tesla has about 80% share in the U.S. EV market share.
All right, stay with us, Gene. I want to continue this conversation with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures, and take a look at the tech sector more broadly, specifically what's ahead for Amazon and Apple. So stay with us for that. It's 39 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Prepare your child for the world ahead with Blundell School, Devon, an independent day and boarding school for 3 to 18-year-olds.
Every day is a different adventure.
Set in 100 idyllic acres amid the rolling hills of Devon, Blundell's can be a crucial part of the equation if you're considering a move to the southwest.
We looked at schools right away across from Salisbury, and Blundell's punches well above its weight. Exeter down the road.
We're proud to offer an outstanding, quality education, less than 2 hours by direct train to central London.
The happy teachers bring the lessons to life.
Blundell's, one of Devon and Cornwall's most prestigious schools for more than 400 years. Rated excellent by the ISI. Learn more at blundells.org.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you buy tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Derek, or Sanjay, or Sue, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, tonight's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gilbert is requiring face masks and imposing a 10 p.m. curfew as Florida's daily infections continue to spiral.
It has been a decade since fireworks were shot off at Mount Rushmore. Over a year ago, at the urging of South Dakota Republicans, the president took it as a personal mission to revive the pyrotechnics that had been banned by the Park Service under the Obama administration because of worries about brush fires. However, Native American activists will protest what they say is stolen land for the monument tonight. And late today, the president will fly out to see the fireworks and return to Washington in the middle of the night. Bob Costantini, Washington.
Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington Redskins, says the team will do a thorough review of the team name after top sponsor FedEx called on the franchise to drop the name, which many Native American groups have said is a racist term. I'm Mike Moss.
Welcome back to the special Independence Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. Let's continue our conversation now with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures, as we look at what's ahead for the tech sector. Of course, it has been the outperformer in this ongoing crazy year we've seen so far, Gene, since the March 23rd bottom, certainly. Where do you see tech going, and what do you think has been driving the outperformance that we've seen so far?
I believe that tech is going to outperform the market because there's going to be a fracturing of the market and between the haves and the have-nots. And there's a the high level of the haves are companies that are becoming an increasingly important part of our lives. The have-nots are companies that have been around us for a long time, but just are playing less important part of our lives. Those are pretty easy to distinguish, but the market more broadly, for people who are doing index investing, the market more broadly is a combination really of the haves and have-nots. Household names that are in the wrong place, plus some tech companies that are in the right place. And what you've seen with the kind of the resurgence of some of these tech names is the market is starting to recognize that. And I think what this ultimately means is that tech is going to outperform, but that doesn't mean that you own all tech at any price. You need to be judicious about what you're paying. And so I do believe that leadership will come from the next FANG that will evolve over the next few years. But that's the essence of why tech is outperforming today and why I think that it will continue to outperform in the years to come.
All right, let's look specifically at some of the biggest FANG names, starting with Amazon. Obviously, that has been a company of choice for people who have been forced to do a lot of their shopping from home during this pandemic. What's the outlook for Amazon as economies at least try to reopen? It's been an uneven reopening, obviously, but what's your view at this point?
So there's the company, the business, and then there's the stock. So,
all right, what we'll see here. We sold euro. Yep, it was right here about an hour ago. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't be on time. We have other shares to trade, so basically I was busier with other stuff. All right, so we sold Euro USD, profit £200.
Is that they will grab more and more of our wallet share. Today, surprisingly, online is only about 15%, 15% of total spending in the U.S. And that piece is going to grow. It won't grow to 100%, but maybe that ends up being 50 or 60%. Amazon's going to have their outsized piece of that. But then more importantly is they're going to start to get more into traditional brick and mortar. They've done that with other stores. They're doing it with some delivered to home concepts around brick and mortar with like Whole Foods coming to your home. And I think those pieces will just continue to accelerate what they're doing. They have this incredible view of a 10-year view. It is ultimately playing. I do want to add, it's worth adding, this story plays somewhere in between what price do you own Amazon at. It does trade at a rich multiple, and that's the piece that we struggle with. How much do you pay for shares of Amazon?
All right, so what's your outlook for the valuation?
My sense is there's going to be some better places to own. It's not that this is a bad stock to own. It's not that it's a great stock. I just think that there'll be more compelling names to own given its valuation. And yes, they're going to get economies of scale. Their profitability will increase over time. But I just think when you put it all together, great company, but maybe not a great stock over the next few years.
In terms of the company itself, Gene, where do you see some of the biggest growth factors for Amazon? Obviously, it's an e-commerce company. It's also a cloud company. It's also an advertising company. Where do you see the biggest sectors for growth?
The biggest sector is going to be doing more in brick and mortar. And they currently have about 50 relatively small brick and mortar locations outside of their Whole Foods network. But I think that they have a massive opportunity to really streamline brick and mortar. It is call it 85% of what's bought is bought people physically walking the stores today. That number will decrease, but Amazon isn't even really a player there. That's probably the biggest area of growth is what they can do. I see them really shaking up that. I predicted a few years ago that Amazon would buy Target. I've been incorrect on that. I stand by my view that brick and mortar is their biggest growth opportunity, and they will make big moves there in the years to come.
All right, we're speaking with Gene Munster. He's co-founder of Loop Ventures, one of the biggest tech analysts on Wall Street. Let's talk a little bit more now about Apple, the other A in the FANG acronym. What's your outlook there? I mean, the company has also been grinding higher despite the pandemic.
I think this is your best place for upside over the next couple of years within kind of the traditional FANG, in part because there are areas that they're playing into, and also there's just this sense that it's kind of had its move, that it's hard to imagine Apple going higher given how big it is today, and I think that that is misguided by investors. They're missing some of the fundamental truths about where this company is going, and those are multi-layered. In the near term, it's a steady business. In the intermediate term, the kind of the 2 to 5 years, they're going to have a significant upgrade cycle around 5G. It will be disappointing at first, 5G, but it will ultimately create what we think is a 3-year upgrade cycle. It will exceed the expectations. This is going to be probably the most exciting thing for consumers and their mobile experience over the last 10 years. I think this is noteworthy, and Apple will participate in that. And then there's the side of health and wellness. They have really running the table when it comes to wearables with Apple Watch. There is now, of course, an increased focus from consumers on health and wellness, and Apple Watch is a cost-efficient way to do that. Still nascent. Only 8% of iPhone owners use an Apple Watch, and that number could grow significantly higher, 30, 40, 50% over time. And so that's another growth driver. And then you layer on top of that what they're doing with services, and then the wild cards around could they do something in autonomy? Could they do even more creative things around healthcare beyond Apple Watch? I think when you put all that together, along with their management team, this story could be significantly higher. You can build a case that this is a $500 stock, and that would be a valuation in line with current valuations from other tech giants.
It's interesting that you focus on the health and wellness aspect of this company. Interesting that it comes at a time when so many of us are focused on health and wellness. Could that be a significant catalyst given where consumers' mindset is right now?
It is, and the way I think it plays out is you just have this steady high growth around specifically the watch for the next few years. It's a small part of their business today. It's 5% of revenue. It's growing. In the March quarter, the growth dipped because of everything that was going on, but it was, call it 25% growth, much higher than overall Apple's business growth, which is essentially flat. And so I think that this is going to be fundamental. What makes tech, the intersection of tech and wellness, is to take something that we use every day and make that into something that can improve our wellness. A perfect example is the watch. And they have essentially put a computer on your wrist. It's different than what Fitbit did. That was, a smartwatch, I would call it. This is different than really a full computer that you can download apps to. And it's pretty exciting for Apple to be the hardware piece and really allow app developers to enhance our wellness through using that platform. And I see that as just a massive growth opportunity for Apple in the next decade.
A lot of the story about Apple over the last few months has been sort of the push-pull between the company being more services-oriented or more hardware, more gadget-oriented. How do you see the company striking that balance as we head further into the second half?
Understandable that that's the topic. Is this a service company? Is it a hardware company? Most investors land that this, just given the percentage of revenue, is 80% is largely hardware-based, that this is a hardware company. The way that we view it is just taking this higher-level approach. And we think that investors will gravitate to a view that be less concerned about whether it's coming from services, whether it's Apple Music or Apple TV Plus, the App Store, or the hardware, the iPhone, the iPad, less about those segments, more about what is revenue growth and earnings growth. That is one of the kind of illuminate pieces that needs to be illuminated. Is this company just defines power and earnings, amount of cash that they can generate, $60 billion a year, is just makes other even tech companies pale in comparison. We believe that the question about hardware versus services and the multiple over time, it's going to take probably 2 or 3 years, but over time, that conversation will shift to this company just has a suite of products that work really well together, that enhance people's lives and ultimately power earnings and revenue growth.
Our thanks to Gene Munster, as well as Jim Paulson of Leuthold Whedon and Mark Vittner, senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. And our thanks to you for joining us. Have a great and safe holiday weekend. And please join us Monday morning at 5 a.m. Wall Street time for Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. It's 57 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
Prepare your child for the world ahead with Blundell's School Devon, an independent day and boarding school for 3 to 18-year-olds.
Blundell's is a very exciting and great place to be a student at.
Set in 100 idyllic acres amid the rolling hills of Devon, Blundell's can be a crucial part of the equation if you're considering a move to the southwest.
I can honestly say I wouldn't have made it to Cambridge University without the support of the teachers at Blundell's.
We're proud to offer an outstanding, quality education, less than 2 hours by direct train to central London.
I really like having a smaller class size because it helps me get more support from teachers.
Blundell's, one of Devon and Cornwall's most prestigious schools for more than 400 years. Rated excellent by the ISI. Learn more at blundels.org.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this afternoon. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that washing machine can handle all that laundry. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Listening has always taught us a lot at Honda. And lately, we've been listening to your thumbs. Because thumbs can do everything now. The world is at their thumb tips. So now, the My Honda Plus app lets the thumb take control of your car too. Even when you're not inside the new Honda E, your thumb can find where you parked, set the temperature before you get in, check how much the battery is charged, and schedule charging for when electricity is cheapest. The new Honda E and My Honda Plus app. Oh, a thumbs up. Honda, the power of dreams.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, tune in as the latest guidelines from the CDC. Indoor gatherings. Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Open windows for better ventilation. Try to avoid gathering indoors as much as possible. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
COVID treatments. Positivity rates rise. I'm Mike Moss. The World Health Organization expects initial results within 2 weeks from clinical trials that it's currently conducting on drugs that might be effective in treating COVID-19 patients. Meanwhile, more people are being tested for coronavirus, and the rate of those testing positive is spiking. George Washington University professor Dr. Jonathan Reiner says it shows that the increase in testing is not the reason that the number of cases is rising.
So it's not just that we're finding more asymptomatic people because we're testing more. We're finding more sick people. So it's not just an artifact of testing. So the system is really being stressed. There's no question about it. The virus is surging in large parts of the United States.
Thursday marked another record high for coronavirus infections, 55,000. About 40 states now reporting their virus infections rising. President Trump will head to Mount Rushmore National Memorial today to celebrate an early 4th of July.
It has been a decade since fireworks were shot off at Mount Rushmore. Over a year ago, at the urging of South Dakota Republicans, the president took it as a personal mission to revive the pyrotechnics that had been banned by the Park Service under the Obama administration because of worries about brush fires. However, Native American activists will protest what they say is stolen land for the monument tonight. Late today, say the president will fly out to see the fireworks and return to Washington in the middle of the night. Bob Costantini, Washington.
The mayor of Florida's most populous county has issued a new overnight curfew and will close some businesses that reopened in June. Miami-Dade Mayor Charles Jimenez says that the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew begins tonight and will be in place indefinitely. The order closes casinos, theaters, and other entertainment venues as well. I'm Mike Moss.
Picture this. A shortage of fuel has closed your electric utility, or any other possible disaster devastated your town. You're out of power, no lights, no news. That's why federal and state agencies urge you to have an emergency radio. Now you can get a free Dynamo World Band emergency radio. This powerful radio lets you stay informed during any type of emergency. It doesn't even need batteries. It comes with a hand-crank generator and super bright LED flashlight. The Dynamo emergency radio includes the NOAA weather band, a long-range AM receiver, a high-sensitivity FM band, and even a USB jack to charge cell phones or other devices. The Dynamo Emergency Weather Band radio retails for almost $30, but Newsmax wants to make sure you get this radio. So check out the free offer for the emergency radio by going to gettheradio.com. That's gettheradio.com, or call toll-free 877-NEWSMAX. That's 877-NEWSMAX. This radio could save your life. This offer may end soon, so order today.
A scaled-down Nathan's 4th of July hot dog eating contest will still take place tomorrow.
Coney Island will still host the annual spectacle of overconsumption.
Canceling Nathan's would be canceling the 4th of July. We're not going to do that.
But host George Shea said this will be a very different Nathan's 4th of July hot dog eating contest because of coronavirus.
It will be 6 men and 5 women.
They'll be spaced 6 feet apart with plexiglass between them, and it'll be in a secret location with no in-person audience. 12-time champion Joey Jaws Chestnut often depends on the crowd.
It's going to be weird not having the audience, the sound of the audience.
It'll be broadcast live on ESPN. Steve Kastenbaum, New York.
The Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder says that team will conduct a thorough review of changing names after top sponsor FedEx and other sponsors called on the team to change the name. Native American groups have called that name racist. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills from the Bloomberg Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by SEI. Visionary asset managers find opportunity where others are challenged. Exploit disruption's potential with SEI's global operating platform. Find out how at SEIC.com/IMS. U.S. financial markets are closed in observance of July 4th. European stocks are down as investors see conflicts in Europe over monetary policy and a proposed economic stimulus package. Also weighing on the markets, political turmoil in France, where President Emmanuel Macron has named a new prime minister. In London, the FTSE 100 down 1.3%. The CAC 40 in Paris off 0.8%. Germany's DAX is off 0.2%. Shares finished higher in Asia in Friday trading. The Nikkei in Japan up 0.7%. The Nasdaq set a new record high in Thursday trading, even as millions of Americans remain unemployed and many businesses face bleak prospects as new coronavirus cases hit a record high. Alan Zafran, founding partner and co-CEO at IEQ Capital, says the Federal Reserve's flooding of the economy with money is driving the stock market tear.
There's clearly a disconnect between the current status of the financial markets and the main economy. A lot of the capital that the balance sheet is expansion for the Fed is happening is going right to the stock market. It's not connected to people working in the leisure and hospitality industry or out here in Southern California, the motion picture and sound recording industries. Those people have lost jobs, and it's not clear they're coming back.
Citigroup probably won't bring even half of its workforce back to offices around the world until a coronavirus vaccine is available. The bank has begun returning a small percentage of workers to offices globally, but has run into a consistent problem: public transportation. Employees are hesitant to use subways or buses to get to work. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Best.
Bloomberg Best is about the insight and the context that we get from our guests.
It's a great way to catch up on some of the stories you might have missed on the Bloomberg.
Stories you're not going to find in any other news organization.
Bloomberg Best. Bloomberg's best stories of the week. Powered by 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries around the world.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, I'm Denise Pellegrini, and on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Best for Friday, July 3rd, 2020, we'll hear some of the most influential conversations from the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 virtual conference. This hour, we hear from U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin discussing the ongoing economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic, plus John Rogers, Ariel Investments Chairman and co-CEO, discusses the impact of COVID-19 on minority communities. And Bridgewater Associates co-CIO Bob Prince tells Bloomberg the impact of the coronavirus pandemic could last 18 to 24 months. Steven Mnuchin is the 77th Secretary of the Treasury. He was instrumental in the implementation of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and leads the Treasury Department's regulatory reform efforts. Carlyle Group's David Rubenstein caught up with Mnuchin at the Leadership Live at the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 virtual conference. Here, they discuss the likelihood of another stimulus package in the United States. Let's listen in.
It's something we're very seriously considering. The president has been clear that we put a lot of money into the economy. We had an unprecedented response on a bipartisan basis in the last CARES bill, and there's no question that money is having a major impact on the economy, whether it's the PPP, which impacted 50 million workers, or whether it's the direct payments of over 160 million or enhanced unemployment. These are all having an important part of protecting American workers and American business. We are beginning to discuss the different aspects of what another bill would look like. We want to take our time because, number one, there's a lot of money we still haven't put out. And number two, we want to make sure whatever we do going forward is much more targeted to the businesses that are most impacted.
But timing, you think that it's likely that sometime in July a bill might pass both houses?
I do. That would be the timing.
Okay, and the negotiations, there are some people who think that you are not tough enough on the Democrats, and therefore some Republicans are saying that you should have a partner, Mark Meadows or somebody else, to negotiate. But in your view, you'll be the principal person negotiating with the Congress on this legislation. Is that right?
Well, David, I mean, let me first be clear. What I'm doing at the direction of the president, and it's the president's policies. Last time, Mark had just come on board, and I asked Mark to come up with me. He was very critical in helping with the last bill, so we have a great teamwork, and he will be there with me. But let me just say, I'm very proud of the fact that the last two bills were 96-0 and 100-0. So this isn't a question of being tough enough or not being tough enough. We had unprecedented bipartisan support at a time when it was critical to get money into the economy and to help American workers.
What parts of the various bills that have passed so far, which do you think has been the most effective so far? The PPP, the unemployment insurance, the other loan programs, which are you think is working the best so far?
Well, David, as you know, because you've lived through other financial times, this is a very, very different situation than we've ever seen before. This is the first time that we've shut down the entire U.S. economy because of a virus, and we had to have a different approach. And the reason I mean a different approach was it was very important to get money into the economy quickly. Things that took 4 or 5 or 6 months, even if they in the long term worked better, would not have been effective. So we needed to have a range of tools. And if you look at the CARES Act, there were different tools that we used to put massive amounts of money into the economy. Obviously, as I just mentioned before, you had the PPP, you had the direct payments, you had the unemployment. We also had a program for the airlines, which was very critical. We had $450 billion that we could work with the Federal Reserve on the 13.3 facilities, and this really worked perfect. The mere announcement of some of these facilities unlocked the markets. even without spending a penny of taxpayer dollars, it unlocked to the point where, we've had unprecedented corporate issuance. Companies like Boeing, which I thought were going to need to come to us in our national security program, borrowed $25 billion in the market without putting a penny of taxpayer money at risk.
So right now, would you say that the legislation that you've passed is working reasonably well? But would you say the Fed has done as good a job as you would like them to do? They have a lending program, which I think has not yet actually lent money. And can you say whether the president is happy today or happier today with the head of the Federal Reserve?
Well, I think the Federal Reserve has done a phenomenal job. We speak to them almost on a daily basis. These programs are a combination of work of the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and I think we've worked very well together. Every single one of these programs is now up and running. So we have a municipal bond program, we have a money market program, we have a commercial paper program, we have a Main Street program that's now up and running, we have a corporate primary and secondary, we had a program that lent to banks and non-banks for PPP loans. So the Fed acted in unprecedented response, and yes, I think you've seen the president is very pleased with what the Fed has been doing.
That's U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin with David Rubenstein. And coming up, more from Rubenstein's conversation with Steven Mnuchin discussing the U.S. recession sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. This is Bloomberg.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Since 2017, Cameo has been letting people pay celebrities, entertainers, musicians, and influencers to record messages for them. Now the service is expanding into live Zoom calls.
Every single athlete, actor, celebrity at their core is really a gig economy worker.
Stephen Galinas is co-founder and CEO.
The biggest athletes get paid per game. Musicians get paid per show. Stand-up comedians get paid per act.
Which raises the question of how much should it cost for a 10-minute Zoom call, and are celebrities setting the right price?
We have price points so talent can come on and almost use comps like in real estate, where they can see people that are similar stature, maybe teammates of theirs in a sports team or a similar caliber musician in another band.
A 10-minute Zoom call with comedian Gilbert Gottfried was recently listed for $150, while actor Charlie Sheen was going for $500. I'm Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new...
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a computer or to someone called Colin, or Ethan, or Kai, or Rachel, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
How do we control coronavirus now? Here's Michael, a delivery driver.
All day, every day, I'm seeing people. Last thing I want to do is give anyone coronavirus. So the first sign of a cough, soon as my temperature rises, any loss of taste or smell, I'm staying in, booking a test, only going out to get it done. I mean, you want to know straight away, right? That's how we protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Get ready for the University of Bedfordshire. We've got all you need to make ambition become reality, to make lifelong friendships, to make contacts in your chosen industry, to make a name for yourself, to make it. In fact, we've got everything except your application. So get it in, sit back and relax. Wait, actually, check out our generous scholarships and bursaries for support at every step at beds.ac.uk. Okay, now you can relax.
You're listening to Bloomberg Best on Bloomberg Radio.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Bloomberg Best. Let's continue the conversation between Carlyle Group co-founder David Rubenstein and U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Here, they discuss the timetable for the recession. Mnuchin says the U.S. will emerge from the downturn by the end of the year.
The traditional economic metrics aren't really appropriate given we shut down the economy. So first, let me say there were way too many people that lost their jobs and got laid off. And again, we're not going to be done until we get every single one of those people back to work. So I'm not really focused on the technical issue of it is a recession or it's not a recession. I'm focused on helping all these small businesses and all the workers. And that's what our job. And I think you saw the recent employment numbers. People thought there'd be another 8 million people unemployed. We put 2.5 million people back to work. Clearly, this is the PPP working. And you saw great retail sales. I think you're going to see the economy had a very bad second quarter. I think you're going to see a spectacular rebound off the bottom in the third quarter.
Some people who have been gotten the PPP loans are very happy with them, but they say it's unclear whether they have to repay them or not. Will the SBA clarify who actually has to repay or not repay those loans?
Well, the good news is, again, I think we struck the right balance here. And for all loans that are less than $2 million, we created a safe harbor around the certification unless there's things like fraud. And for loans over $2 million, they're going to go through an electronic review to make sure that the companies needed the money in the certification. And I think that'll be a very fair process as we go through that.
If you owe taxes on April the 15th, you could file on July the 15th. Is there any consideration, as some people have speculated, that it might be postponed once again to maybe September 15th?
Well, David, it's something I'm thinking about. As of now, we're not intending on doing that, but it is something we may consider. I am pleased to report that I think it was absolutely the right thing to do at the time, because we were absolutely worried about people couldn't get to their accountants, couldn't get their information. And I'm pleased to report that returns filed are down only 10% year over year, and refunds are down only 10%. So the majority of Americans have filed. The majority of those people that needed to get refunds got them. I'd encourage all Americans, if you can file your tax returns, go ahead and do it, particularly if you think you have a refund. And we'll look carefully as we approach this July date.
Okay. Now, you talked about shutting down the economy, which obviously we had to do and was done. But you've also said recently that we can't do it again because we just can't afford to do it. So are you worried that new COVID cases are breaking out in states like Florida or Texas? And how will you deal with that in terms of opening up the economy again, but also protecting the safety of people?
Well, David, I think the president made the absolute right decision. It was a very difficult decision in shutting down the entire economy. The issues that we were concerned about at the time were hospitals were getting way overcrowded. We had issues of ventilators, and we had issues of not having enough medicines. I think, kind of we had an unprecedented effort, especially in places like New York, where we built out extra hospital beds in the convention center. We sent the Navy ship there to be ready as a hospital. And the good news is those never needed to be used. Right now, we're in a different situation. Right now, we have plenty of capacity. We got plenty of ventilators. We've made great progress on viral treatments. And we've made great progress on testing. So I think this is going to be an issue that we have to look at on a local by local basis. Where there are breakouts, there'll be contract tracing. And I think we're just in a completely different situation. So I think it would be highly unlikely we get to a point where we need to shut the economy down again.
Okay. You were one of the principal negotiators with Bob Lighthizer of the deal with China. Are you confident that the Chinese can honor the commitments to buy the products from the United States that they agreed to?
I have every expectation that they will. They have continued to tell us that they will, as recently as last week when Secretary Pompeo met with one of the senior people that flew in from China, and they had a summit. So I have that expectation that they will lead up to their obligation. Now, having said that, let me just comment on, I think the world wants a lot more transparency on COVID. How did it start? How did it spread? How did it spread around the world? And it didn't spread within China. So we shouldn't confuse these two issues. Yes, we have expectations that they will live up to their trade agreements, but we also have expectations they need a lot more transparency around the disease.
There is not more transparency. Do you think there will be a decoupling with the Chinese economy and the U.S. economy? I think you have talked about that recently, but you see that as being separate than the trade agreement. But are you worried about it, or do you think it could be appropriate to have a decoupling at some point?
Well, I don't want to speculate, David. It could. I think you have a lot of companies that are beginning to look at their supply chains and making sure they diversify them. And I think that's something that's prudent to do wherever they are around the world. You have a lot of companies that are looking at bringing jobs back to the U.S. because of our tax incentives in other areas. As we have said all along, if we can compete with China on a fair and level playing field, it is a great opportunity for U.S. businesses and U.S. workers, as China has a large growing middle class, several 100 million people. But if we can't participate and compete on a fair basis, then you are going to see a decoupling going forward.
So the Chinese government is thinking about changing the ways in which it operates and oversees Hong Kong. The president has been concerned about that, so has Secretary Pompeo. If the Chinese government were to go forward with legislation it's considering, do you think the U.S. government might impose some type of sanctions to show its disapproval of what's going on?
Well, David, it's our policy. We don't comment on future sanctions, but what I will comment on is the president, and this was a few weeks ago at his Rose Garden speech, instructed me to convene what's called the President's Working Group on Capital Markets. This is myself and all the major regulators, and we're looking at all of these issues very carefully as it relates to both Hong Kong and as it relates to Chinese issuance on the U.S. exchanges.
And that's U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin with David Rubenstein on Leadership Live at the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 virtual conference. Coming up, Ariel Investments Chairman and co-CEO John Rogers on the impact of COVID-19 on Black Americans. This is Bloomberg.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. The university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Ocular Motor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This this idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also to the U.S. as a societal whole.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
With perspective.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for all those video conferences with your colleagues while sitting at your makeshift desk, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Raj, or Fiona, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Robin on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Get ready for the University of Bedfordshire. We've got all you need to make ambition become reality, to make lifelong friendships, to make contacts in your chosen industry, to make a name for yourself, to make it. In fact, we've got everything except your application. So get it in, sit back and relax. Wait, actually, check out our generous scholarships and bursaries for support at every step at beds.ac.uk. Okay, now you can relax.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for being able to get paid for K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
With the 4th of July weekend underway for some today, many beaches are closed and some communities are requiring face masks to try to slow recent increases in virus infections. Correspondent Dan Simon with more from California.
Beaches in Los Angeles, Orange, and Ventura counties are closed for the weekend. It's going to be up to the various individual jurisdictions how they want to enforce the order, but of course what officials are looking for is voluntary compliance, and it comes as cases continue to surge across California California.
With confirmed cases climbing in 40 states, governors have ordered the wearing of masks in public, and families are being urged to celebrate their independence at home. Under pressure from big sponsor FedEx, the Washington Redskins are now considering a name change. The team's owner, Dan Snyder, vowed never to change the team name. Native American groups have called that team name racist. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by SEI. Asset managers don't get results that are off the charts when their solutions are off the shelf. Learn how SEI's operating platform can turn infrastructure into a competitive advantage at SEIC.com/IMS. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde's signature crisis-fighting tool is becoming the focus of disagreement among policymakers in what could amount to her first major test of discipline. Governing council members face a potential rift over how much their emergency bond purchasing program should stay weighted toward weaker countries such as Italy, according to multiple conversations with central bank officials. Stocks are lower in Europe in Friday trading. The FTSE 100 in London down 1.3%. The DAX in Germany off 0.6%. The Nikkei in Japan finished higher in Friday trading, up 0.7%. U.S. financial markets are closed in observance of the July 4th holiday. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich says no matter what government officials say about reopening the economy, it's up to individual Americans to decide what they feel is safe.
The coronavirus is calling the shots, and it has to call the shots. People are not going to go into malls and take airplanes and do a lot of other things until they feel safe.
Child labor could be on the rise as world food demand falters. This week, the International Coffee Organization warned of the dangers of child labor in major producing countries. With millions thrown out of work and economies slowing, poverty is increasing and hunger is getting worse. FedEx Corporation asked the Washington Redskins to rename the NFL team following protests against racial injustice that have shaken the U.S. The Redskins play at FedEx Field. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Best on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Denise Pellegrini. And John Rogers is Ariel Investments Chairman and Co-Chief Executive Officer. He's a Princeton University alum, and he founded Ariel Investments back in 1983 to focus on patient value investing within small and mid-sized companies. Rogers is a member of the board of directors of McDonald's, Nike, and the New York Times Company. And following the election of President Barack Obama, Rogers served as co-chair for the Presidential Inaugural Committee 2009. More recently, he joined the Barack Obama Foundation's board of directors. He spoke with Bloomberg's Shartia Brantley at the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 virtual conference about the impact of COVID-19 on Black and minority communities and the protests following the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
Well, it's been an extraordinarily difficult, heartbreaking time. And, to see so many people lose their jobs, to see the markets collapse the way they did, it's just been remarkable. I think it must be very much like 1968 when we had all the horrible riots after Dr. King's death. And then, of course, when we got into what happened with Bobby Kennedy, and that whole year was just so extraordinarily, heartbreaking for our country. This is a similar type of a period for us. When you put together the COVID and the race issues, none of us are resting. None of us are relaxed. There's just stress everywhere.
Interesting similarities to, 1968, a very hot year, regarding the assassinations and unrest. But does this feel different in terms of any change that we may see from this? Will the change, is it fleeting or is it sustainable?
I'm hopeful this is going to be sustainable for a couple of reasons. I'm having lots of great conversations with many, many CEOs from companies that we've invested in, to CEOs of the boards that I'm on and that Melody Hobson is on. And we're hearing that they're really serious about change and asking for advice, asking for counsel, and truly listening, which is something that is unique this time. The other thing that's really important, Congress right now is the most progressive Congress we've had in our nation's history. And we have people like Joyce Beatty chairing the subcommittee on diversity and inclusion for the Financial Services Committee, You have Maxine Waters chairing the Financial Services Committee. They both have excellent staffs, talented people. It gives me hope that they're going to be able to take this environment and change lives and change opportunities for African Americans from an economic justice perspective, because that's what often gets lost. Social justice is important, but it's tied also to economic justice.
Definitely. And let's talk about the wealth gap. So the median net worth of a white family is about $171,000. For a black family, it's about $17,000, so about a tenth for a black family, according to the Federal Reserve. What does multi-generational wealth and the role of multi-generational wealth, what role does that play in these numbers when we look at net worth?
Multi-generational wealth in this country, we've been going backwards the last 40 years or so. That is one of the key things that I think that people really don't understand, is how much worse it is for African Americans than we were 40 years ago. So we've got to figure out a way to make a dent in that problem. And the way that I think we have to do it is we have to have more black business leaders in corporate America, but we also have to have more black successful African American entrepreneurs. Because growing up here in Chicago, when we had George Johnson running Afro Sheen and Ultra Sheen, and John Johnson running Ebony and Jet Magazine, they were role models for folks. They hired hundreds of thousands of people. They created enormous philanthropy for our community and political empowerment for our community. We have to go back. If we want to get multi-generational wealth, we've got to have more black business leaders and more black successful entrepreneurs of scale.
The lack of black executives in the C-suite. I mean, for example, we only have 4 black men serving as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and not a single black woman. So how do we begin to enter those spaces?
Well, I think it's a couple things. One, if you have successful African-American business leaders and entrepreneurs, the next generation of black business leaders will come along after them. It's interesting. George Johnson's son, Eric, runs the largest black company in Chicago that's a supplier to McDonald's. So decisions that were made to create opportunities for entrepreneurs a generation ago have brought together a new generation of successful entrepreneurs. That's something that's important. But it's also critically important that we get African Americans who are on corporate boards and progressive leaders that are on corporate boards to hold their management teams accountable for diversity and inclusion. Tie it directly to their pay. Have a Rooney rule when it comes to hiring, and make sure that when you're in that boardroom, you're confident and comfortable bringing up social justice and economic justice issues when you're in the boardroom. The civil rights agenda often gets left out if you're not courageous enough to go out and speak truth to power, and tell the leadership of these corporations that they have to live up to the commitments they've made around diversity and inclusion. Not just talk a good game, but really execute.
That's Ariel Investments Chairman and co-CEO John Rogers speaking with Bloomberg's Shartia Brantley at the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 Virtual Conference. Coming up, Bridgewater Associates co-CIO Bob Prince says the impact of the coronavirus pandemic could last 18 to 24 months. More next. This is Bloomberg.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon N.A. Member FDIC.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, and our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute, the new retail.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you buy tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Priya, or Lewis, or Zoe, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
How do we control coronavirus now? Here's Michael, a delivery driver.
All day, every day, I'm seeing people. Last thing I want to do is give anyone coronavirus. So the first sign of a cough, soon as my temperature rises, any loss of taste or smell, I'm staying in, booking a test, only going out to get it done. I mean, you want to know straight away, right? That's how we protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up at the Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brince's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
With the 4th of July weekend underway for some today, many beaches are closed and some communities are requiring face masks to try to slow recent increases in virus infections. Correspondent Dan Simon with more from California.
Beaches in Los Angeles, Orange, and Ventura counties are closed for the weekend. It's going to be up to the various individual jurisdictions how they want to enforce the order. But, of course, what officials are looking for is voluntary compliance. And it comes as cases continue to surge across California California.
With confirmed cases climbing in 40 states, governors have ordered the wearing of masks in public, and families are being urged to celebrate their independence at home. Under pressure from big sponsor FedEx, the Washington Redskins are now considering a name change. The team's owner, Dan Snyder, vowed never to change the team name. Native American groups have called that team name racist. I'm Mike Moss.
You're listening to Bloomberg Best on Bloomberg Radio.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Bloomberg Best. And let's turn to another influential conversation from the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 Virtual Conference. Bob Prince is co-chief investment officer at Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund. Bloomberg's Jonathan Farrell caught up with Prince and asked him about the outlook for global markets and what a recovery might look like.
I think there are really three key elements to the current set of circumstances. We have a collapse in global income caused by a pandemic with interest rates at zero, and pretty much everything follows from that. This is very much different than a typical economic cycle, because a typical economic cycle is a contraction in credit brought about by a tightening of monetary policy or fiscal policy, which is largely under the control of the central bank. And when things get bad enough, they cut interest rates, they ease monetary policy, and you come back out of it with an expansion of credit. What's happening this time is that we have the collapse in income. The causal influence is the virus. It's the pandemic, and it's the fear of safety. It's basically people staying home and not producing things that's caused a collapse in income, and the collapse in income causes a collapse in spending. So whereas normally you have monetary policy leading that tightening, credit falling, spending falling, and then income being the last thing to fall, in this case, income is the first thing to fall, which is causing a reduction in spending and then all the reactions to that. The driving influence is the virus, which nobody really understands very well, let alone the government responses to the virus, and then the responses of the public to the governments, and very big differences across countries. So there's a huge amount of uncertainty related to the virus as a causal influence. And then to pull out of this, you have zero interest rates. You're also going into this accumulating credit as opposed to reducing credit. So normally in an economic contraction, you're reducing credit, raising interest rates, which gives you a lot of room to cut interest rates and expand credit coming out. In this case, we have zero interest rates, you can't cut them, and credit is expanding, which reduces the potential to pull out of it. So the solution to that problem is actually appropriate, and it's what we refer to as Monetary Policy 3 or MP3. Monetary Policy 1 is really an interest rate-driven monetary policy. That's pretty much come to an end when you hit zero. Monetary Policy 2 was the QE-driven monetary policy post-2008, where you just buy the assets. But when the risk premiums are already low, there's a lot less potential for that. Monetary Policy 3 is where we are now. And MP3 is the coordination of fiscal policy with monetary policy, where really the biggest actor is the fiscal stimulation, where you can direct the funds to the parts of the economy that most need it, but you support that with monetary policy and the printing of money to buy those bonds so that the interest rates don't go up and reverse the effects that you're trying to achieve. So that's a direct reflection of the fact that we're at zero interest rates, income and income levels are depressed. The actions to date are roughly appropriate. In other words, the amount of printing and the amount of fiscal stimulation has been roughly sufficient to fill the hole in incomes that was created. But not all of that money is getting spent. Let's say 50 cents on the dollar that the government is sending out is actually getting spent. And so actually you haven't had nearly as much of a improvement in spending in the economy as you've had in the liquidity in the system. In addition, the central bank is printing money over and above what it takes to finance those deficits and sending that into all kinds of assets. And so we have a major reflation going on, which has been, by and large, successful so far. The big question about that is that while we're used to thinking in terms of growth rates, which is changes in output over short periods of time, the big thing that's happening now to be thinking about is the collapse in income and the level of income that exists. Because the low level of income that exists will be with us for a while in some substantial degree, which means lower profits, lower spending, and so forth. What also means lower cash flow And for those that are in, kind of treading on thin ice with respect to their financial position, the longer that this goes on, the more difficult it becomes for them. And so you have these two pressures really operating at the same time. You have the collapse in income, which is collapsing cash flows, which will affect those that are most vulnerable to the collapsing cash flows. And you have the expansion of liquidity by the central bank going into assets, but may not be sufficient to cover those cash flows. And the programs to date are by and large sufficient to cover the income gap for about 3 or 4 months, starting from April. So we're really talking about an amount of money that gets you through the summer. And the problem then is that we're talking about the virus, which has a time frame of probably 18 to 24 months. And so I refer to that as a duration mismatch, essentially the time frame of the virus impact on spending and income in relation to the time frame of how long people can last financially.
So as you pointed out, we've got a duration mismatch. Though, as you can see, up until today, with markets down aggressively, we've had a huge rebound because markets are focused on the liquidity side of the equation, not on the cash flows. Are you saying, Bob, are you anticipating that in the next 3 months, as this Band-Aid that was put on a couple of months ago starts to wear off, that we could hit another air pocket?
You're just going to see an instant replay. Every 3 or 4 months, you'll get the instant replay until governments run out of either the willingness or the ability to cover that gap. And so that becomes a very large uncertainty. And that's also different country by country. The United States is in the best position as a reserve currency, but your typical, emerging economy can't necessarily go to the well over and over and over again. And so that also produces differentiation. So the divergent pressures between the income and cash flow to individuals, companies, and even countries, and the production of liquidity is a force that will create a lot of differentiation in outcomes. Your long duration assets, your storeholds of wealth benefit from the liquidity. But if you're a restaurant that can't get the next loan, right, or maybe you don't want the next loan, that liquidity may not help you. And so those companies and those individuals and those countries which are most exposed to the cash flow impact, they're not storeholds of wealth. They don't get the liquidity. They suffer the most. And so that creates a differentiation of outcomes over time, which will be a really key element of what transpires in the next year or two. And from our standpoint, requires two things. A, it requires diversification. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that. And B, it presents alpha opportunities if you can identify how those differential forces will play out.
Well, let's talk about the divergence right now and define what the wrong side of things actually is. Do you think the market's doing a decent job of discriminating and looking through the things that you identify?
Probably not good enough. I mean, you do see some differentiation, but, if it's like 6-4, but the ultimate outcomes are like 8-2 or 10-0, then no, they're not. And so this is a very unique set of circumstances from a market standpoint, because normally we're all thinking about sort of, is the next move up, is the next move down, and that sort of thing. We're thinking in terms of growth rates. But, if you start from a 20% unemployment rate effectively, and you get a lot of growth and you go to a 15% unemployment rate, that's still a 15% unemployment rate. That's a massive shortage of income that's embedded in the system that you either have to allow to flow through the system or the government has to fill that hole. If you go back to the financial crisis in 2008, the peak unemployment rate was 10%. So if we bounce back from a 20 to a 10, we're just where we were in 2008, and then we're there without the ability to cut interest rates and move forward, and having built up a lot of debts just to cover the income hole that we were in. So I think that the difference in the market, the way the markets will play out versus normal, is this accumulation of a low level of income over a long period of time, which is a much different sort of grinding influence that almost can't be really discounted ahead of time effectively, because you really don't know how long it's going to last. But the longer it lasts, that grinding effect of a lower level of income over a sustained period of time will gradually manifest itself on some parts of the economy in the world, while at the same time the efforts to offset that with liquidity will benefit other parts of particularly the marketplace and to some extent the economy. I'll add one other thing to this, which is that at the end of the day, governments normally get what they want when they try hard enough. So we've gone back to 1800 and studied every financial panic and resulting deleverage or reflation in something like 115 out of 125 times across 39 countries. Governments got what they wanted, but those getting what they wanted required choices. So, for example, you got four big ways to kind of untangle yourself from a mess. You've got an easy to monetary policy. You've got an easy to fiscal policy. You've got a debt restructuring, and you've got a currency devaluation. And so right now we have the first two. We have the easy to monetary policy, and we have the fiscal policy. And it's an all-out effort on that basis. The question becomes, at what point is that enough, or do we then transition to debt restructurings and currency devaluations? And from there, what is the status of the dollar as a reserve currency? And then from there, what is the storehold of wealth? And those are the big questions that we're really focused on right now, and also our clients are really thinking a lot about as well.
And that was Bridgewater Associates co-CIO Bob Prince with Bloomberg's Jonathan Farrell. And coming up in the next hour, more influential conversations from the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 Virtual Conference. We'll hear from the heads of Goldman Sachs and Citigroup and the co-CEO of Carlyle Group. That's next. This is Bloomberg.
NJIT.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this afternoon. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that laptop can help you improve your home setup. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
My name is Donya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything, from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Kill O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
On the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg Quick Take, this is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Pandemic holiday, called to change name. I'm Mike Moss. Two of the states seeing the sharpest increases in new coronavirus infections, Texas and California, are telling people to wear face coverings. Correspondent Lucy Kavanaugh is in hard-hit Houston.
It's now required to wear them if you live in a county that has 20 or more cases. That applies to roughly 95% of all of Texans. This does come as the state continues to see a surge in cases. Yesterday, nearly 8,000 new coronavirus cases. Hospitalizations are also up, more than 7,300 people in the hospital. That's putting a strain on facilities, and people are worried that as we go into this 4th of July weekend, despite these new restrictions, we could still see cases continue to rise.
Florida is also seeing record-breaking infections and is not mandating people wear face masks. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor.
Well, I put a face mask order in place in the city of Tampa 2 weeks ago yesterday. The county followed suit a week ago, and so we are very hopeful that our numbers are going to start decreasing dramatically here in the city of Tampa.
Face masks are optional for the 7,500 people expected to be at Mount Rushmore tonight with the president for a fireworks display. Correspondent Joe Johns is there.
This area is seen as sacred to Native Americans, including the Lakota Sioux. They say they're going to protest the president's arrival as well as the monument itself. They'd like to see this area given back to them.
He once said he would never change his team's name. Now the owner of the Washington Redskins, Dan Snyder, says he is considering doing just that. It comes after sponsors told the team to make the change. Native Americans have called the team name racist. FedEx told the team they should change the name. I'm Mike Moss.
Trading involves financial risk and is not suitable for all investors.
Stock market have you nervous with all the massive fluctuations? With the impact of coronavirus and the upcoming election, it's virtually impossible to guess what will happen next. With Vantage Point, you don't have to. Text the word money to 411-411 to find out how our technology can forecast market trend changes with up to 87.4% accuracy. That's right, 87.4%. Text the word money to 411-411 to get what you need to stay ahead of market trends and better protect yourself from sudden downturns. Vantage Point's patented technology analyzes huge quantities of global data in seconds. No more guessing when to stay or when to get out. Text money to 411-411 and we'll send you a link to our free demo. Text money to 411-411 so you can better protect your hard-earned capital with Vantage Point. Don't wait. Text the word money to 411-411.
Go to VantagePointSoftware.com for terms, conditions, and privacy policy.
California is trying to fend off a new surge in coronavirus cases.
Wearing a mask is foundational.
With a sharp rise in infections from COVID-19 in California, hospitalizations up 56%, ICU bed admissions up 49%, and a positivity rate that's jumped from 4.4% to 6.3% over the past few weeks, Governor Gavin Newsom warns that there will be enforcement in the order to wear face coverings this weekend.
People know what the right thing to do is. I encourage them to do the right thing.
Law enforcement in several cities and counties are prepared to issue citations to people who ignore the order. Residents will get a warning first, but after that, in West Hollywood, for example, if you're caught not wearing a mask a second time, it'll cost you $250. A fifth time, $5,000. Jim Roop, Los Angeles.
The World Health Organization says it'll provide new treatment guidance for the coronavirus when it completes its independent study in the next 2 weeks. It'll be the first update from the World Health Organization since the pandemic began. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are closed for the July 4th holiday. Stocks are lower in Europe after gains in Asian markets that followed yesterday's advance in the U.S., with the Nasdaq hitting a fresh record high. In Europe, investors are rattled by disagreements within the European Central Bank over stimulus measures as the economy suffers during the pandemic. Checking the markets, the FTSE 100 in London down 1.3%, the DAX in Germany off 0.2%. Japan's Nikkei rose 0.7% in Friday trading. S&P 500 index futures are down 0.4%. Alan Zafran, founding partner and co-CEO at IEQ Capital, says the coronavirus has accelerated wealth disparity in the U.S.
And unfortunately, I think COVID has accelerated a lot of trends, one of which is the widening gap between the rich and the poor. If you have a balance sheet, you're actually benefiting as we bounce back. If you live day to day, you may have lost that job and you don't have any of the savings to benefit here.
Facebook executives plan to meet with at least 3 civil rights groups on Tuesday after their organizations led an advertising boycott of the social media giant. We get details on that from Bloomberg's John Metaxas.
Chief Executive Officer Mark Zuckerberg and Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg requested the meeting after several major brands, including Starbucks, Levi Strauss, PepsiCo, and Diageo, pulled their ads from Facebook. A growing number of organizations are hoping to push Facebook and its peers to suppress posts that glorify violence, divide and misinform the public, and promote racism and discrimination. Zuckerberg and Sandberg will sit down with leaders of the Anti-Defamation League, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the group Color of Change. John Metaxas, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Best.
Bloomberg Best is about the insight and the context that we get from our guests.
It's a great way to catch up on some of the stories you might have missed on the Bloomberg.
Stories you're not going to find in any other news organization.
Bloomberg Best. Bloomberg's best stories of the week. Powered by 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries around the world.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Denise Pellegrini. Welcome to the second hour of this special holiday edition of Bloomberg Best for Friday, July 3rd, 2020. Coming up, we'll hear more influential conversations from the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 Virtual Conference. Citigroup President and CEO Jane Fraser discusses the next generation of consumer banking, and Carlyle Group co-CEO Kyu-Sung Lee says an economic recovery in the U.S. is likely to be more challenging than in China. But first, we hear from Goldman Sachs Chairman and CEO David Solomon on the timeline for an economic recovery. Bloomberg's editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite caught up with Solomon at the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 Virtual Conference. Let's listen in.
This crisis has had a profound impact on the economic environment that we're operating in. And the result of that, obviously, was a very, very sharp, steep decline in economic activity as we led into the height of the crisis. And now we're somewhere in the middle, and we're starting to see some economic recovery. My guess is that when you look at the shape of the recovery, the initial shape of it is going to look quite like a V. We had a very, very steep decline, and we are going to have, as we open back up, somewhat of an accelerated recovery. I think the more complicated question, and a hard one really to answer at this point in time, is as you look forward, or you think about what's going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months, how are the effects of this crisis going to have a further impact on the economy going forward? And so a lot of that, I think, is still very uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty still around the healthcare situation. There's a lot of uncertainty still around human behavior as we're opening up. And so I do think we're going to see a sharp V to start with, but it's very open-ended as to what kind of economic friction we're going to see as we get through the end of the year and into 2021. History would tell you that to fully recover from a shock like this is going to take some time. And so my expectation is while the climb up that we see, in the initial here over the next couple of months will look quite like a V, I think it'll get more challenging and flatten out as we finish out the year and head into 2021. I think it's going to take quite a while for us to get back to where we were before this started.
For an economy to go through this sort of shock, and with those kind of long-term productions that you're talking about, where there will be, really quite sizable effects going forward, do you think the markets look high?
I'm never going to say the markets look one way or another, because the markets are always smarter than I am at this current moment, at this moment in time. But what I will say, it's not surprising that there's been a flood of money into equities, given what's happened from a monetary policy perspective. The amount of monetary policy and support that's come into markets, the fact that rates are basically at zero, people that have capital deploy are looking for opportunities to earn a return, and that's pushing money into equities. I would say that, for me, the equity market does seem to be a little bit ahead of my view of the future earnings performance of businesses as we look 6 to 12 months out. And if that's true, and I'm right about that, you'll see a rebalancing of that over time. But there's no question there's been a significant movement of money into equities, which right now, if you're looking to earn a return over some period of time, is the only game in town. I'd also say that the markets are definitely telling us that people are more optimistic, here in the U.S. certainly, about the reopening. I think there's a lot of question and uncertainty just around the course of this. It's clear to me that we have to learn to live with the virus and operate with the virus and do so safely. But the markets are certainly, it seems, discounting the difficulty of that. And that's something we'll just have to watch closely in the months ahead.
I'll come back to how Goldman's reacted to the virus in a second, but just on this issue about the economy generally, you probably talked to as many sort of CEOs as anybody. Is there a sense that there is a worry about credit going forward? Is that people, there must be some companies which have really been turned upside down by this. Some of them had to go running to the government. Do you worry about that? Was that part of your worries about the sort of the slightly longer term future?
Well, sure. If you think about credit's certainly an area where any financial institution that's a significant lender is spending a lot of time thinking about what the impacts would be. At the moment, given monetary policy, which is open markets, large companies certainly have access to capital, and many of them have pulled their financing forward in a way that's allowed them to at least sit securely knowing that they're well financed as the volatility of the crisis plays out. For smaller enterprises, smaller, medium-sized businesses, that's more complicated. For anyone that's following the banks, as the banks will report at the end of the second quarter, you'll have some clarity as to the forward when people look at the provisioning that's pulled forward in banks' income statements, especially with CECL now pulling, expected future losses or model losses forward. So there's no question that credit's an area of sensitivity, and depending on the severity of the economic contraction and the path forward, there will be a bigger impact to credit over time. But it's still hard to judge, just as I was saying earlier, because it's really unclear how the recovery will take hold, because there's still a lot of uncertainty around the fundamental issue, which is the health issue and how it affects human behavior, how human behavior affects demand.
Do you think there's a chance of a merger wave as companies think they might be stronger together dealing with this?
There's no question that the number one thing that I think affects merger activity is confidence, CEO confidence, board confidence. And so it wouldn't surprise you that as we went into the height of the crisis at the end of March and April, and this is something we'd have insight into, from our platform, merger dialogue collapsed. And there's no question that's really driven first and foremost by confidence. I think we're now at a point where things are normalizing a little bit, and there's no question that the engagement that we're seeing from CEOs on strategic ideas, strategic possibilities has increased significantly. But as you well know, John, those aren't things that turn on a dime. Those things take time. And so I do think that we will see a slowdown in merger activity in this environment. But I do think there are a lot of very strong platforms that are going to be looking for opportunities to strengthen their position. And then there are certainly people that have interesting businesses that might be under pressure or a little weaker or might be more open to those approaches in this environment. So I'd expect a lot of dialogue, but, through the summer into the fall, until there's more certainty, I still think broadly at a high level, merger activity levels are going to be more muted.
That was Goldman Sachs Chairman and CEO David Solomon. And coming up, more from Bloomberg Editor-in-Chief John Micklethwaite's interview with the Goldman boss. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Companies looking to make money from autonomous vehicles have mainly focused on making deliveries to homes or providing ride-hailing services. But Bloomberg senior writer Kyle Stock says a startup called Gatik concentrates on moving groceries from point to point in the so-called middle mile.
From a large distribution center to a smaller distribution center or a store where customers can pick up at the curb.
Before products are put on board, humans make sure the vehicles can navigate the static routes.
They'll drive the route for 4 to 6 weeks, and they map the roads, the tricky spots. And then from there, they can make choices. They can make sure these vehicles always drive in the slow lane, that they only take right turns.
Walmart has signed on as one of Gatik's first customers. Gatik says it's profitable now, even though it still puts a safety driver in every vehicle.
At some point, that person will come out, and the economics will improve.
Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being...
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Jack, or Miguel, or Haley, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Get ready for the University of Bedfordshire. We've got all you need to make ambition become reality, to make lifelong friendships, to make contacts in your chosen industry, to make a name for yourself, to make it. In fact, we've got everything except your application. So get it in, sit back and relax.